Hello, everyone.
You're back?
You?
The guy on the left, I can't believe he's back.
Are you a real version of a YouTube commenter?
Hey, I'm just, it gets inside you and you can't help but to let it out.
The anger?
It happens so much. Yeah, right. The anger, the trolling, all that's fun.
How do you deal with trolls?
I actually never see the things that they say because I don't read it.
You don't read it?
I mean, I read it when it's someone else.
It sounds like you read it.
Well, when it's anything direct towards me, I really don't really see it. Once I start seeing
what about on
JR
Twitter?
in a negative word, I stop reading.
Right. What if it's a positive word?
Oh, I read all of them.
Yeah, so technically you wouldn't know if you're reading it, if it's a positive or negative word until you get to that word.
Yeah, I read it until that point, then I stop.
Oh, okay.
If you say, I love, and I see JR, I'm like, I'll continue to read this one.
So is this more so on Twitter?
Well, actually, everyone loves...
I don't give a shit.
Everyone loves me on Twitter.
What'd you say?
Everyone loves me on Twitter.
They love you on Twitter?
Everyone loves me.
I'd love to know if that's factual. So, solid start. Thanks for everybody watching on the live stream as well. This is going to be interesting.
Oh, it's a live stream today. This is perfect. I'm glad I did this.
Yes, then you can get real trolling comments in real time.
I'm glad I went random to start this.
The Philadelphia 76ers lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers yesterday. Here's something that I noticed. Now, obviously, Ben Simmons left with a right ankle sprain. X-rays were negative, but let's show plus minus. I'm not huge on. I've discussed this previously with Jason. So this is the box score of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Just take a look at this, okay? So just look at plus minus and points overall. So the point, LeBron James, this is why it's misconstrued a little bit. He affected the game in so many ways.
Right.
His plus minus is +1. But I think when you're in the plus 20s is when it's kind of important. Look at their bench. Channing Frye was a plus 23. Okay? Excuse me. No, yeah, that was Channing Frye. I can't read. Yeah, Jeff Green was a plus 25. Dwayne Wade was a plus 21. Kyle Korver was a plus 25. So I think you know where this is going to go. The Philadelphia 76ers were really bad defensively. Dario Saric is proving to be probably somebody that they should try shopping to improve defensively, because it seems like even with his 10 rebounds, the stat line is a little deceiving. JJ Redick was ice fucking cold, man. This team was ice cold from 3. Look at that, 3 for 28. JJ Redick only took 4, but Robert Covington, who I feel bad for, on a serious note, just leave this up for a second. On a serious note, one of his childhood friends, unfortunately, was shot and killed. He learned of it prior to the game. So you're going to be off. I don't know if many of us would even show up to work, so I applaud him for that. From a basketball standpoint, Joel Embiid was pretty good, but again, from a plus-minus standpoint, Saric, minus 26. Yeah. JJ Redick, minus 29. Embiid, good player, minus 23. Ben Simmons had a really rough time because Jay Crowder was hounding him defensively. Just not a good game at all.
I think this is one of those situations where, yeah, Philadelphia's on the rise, rebound, look like a good team. Everybody's wondering to what degree they're going to make it. Mm-hmm. Are they going to slip in with a, 7 seed?
I can see them making the playoffs in the East.
Right. So
I can see you, me, Ja'Cory, Edwin, and Annie making the playoffs in the East. Like, that's how bad.
But then with such a flip, obviously, from how horrible they've been recently, this being like, now everyone's excited about seeing this young team. What we are now finding out, which I think we already kind of knew, it's still a young team. They're good.
Yes.
Yes, Embiid is a superstar, staying healthy. Simmons is going to be great, staying healthy. All this and then you bring in a couple of veterans, JJ Redick. Oh, never played defense in his life. So, I'm sorry, man. You took a couple charges at Duke, and that works, right? But
right.
So what we'll
find out. My
favorite
favorite anti-Duke chant, real quick, was when Greg Paulus was at the free throw line against Virginia Tech, and he's shooting right into the student section. And like everybody knows, if you are a white basketball player at Duke who takes a lot of charges, you are by default the most hated college basketball player in the world. And all they chanted was "Teabag Paulus."
No, and this is residual. That hate is residual off of Christian Laettner, Because I mean,
Yes.
it was a great document. I'm sorry, we've gone off on a side, but that's okay.
That's fine. It's fine.
The
30 for
I forget
30
if it was a 30 for
Leitner.
30
Yeah,
or if it was like
30 for 30.
But
Yeah.
Christian Leitner, why I hate Christian Leitner, I think is what they called
Yes,
it, and it was
correct.
excellent. And it told you why you hate him. You don't discount that anymore, and then you
Right.
accept it because
Yeah.
that's just the way it is.
That's just Duke, though. That's just Duke in a nutshell.
Every white guy that went to Duke after that who takes charges and has this like hustle mentality, and is a good shooter.
Okay, here's a perfect example. When I forgot the broadcaster's name, but on CBS, what was this thing about Cam Newton? When the camera's always pointed to him and we're on him.
About Cam?
Yeah, about Cam Newton.
I didn't even know. No, I don't know this.
No,
this guy.
you turned me on to this. You were like, oh, the broadcasters on CBS, the SEC on. Oh, look at his smile.
Oh, the smile. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been a while. Yeah. I've
Remember?
So that becomes the thing about him.
Right.
Oh,
So
the
here's my
smile can light
comparison:
up
is
a
that
room.
broadcasters run with when Duke players slap the floor and when they take right.
They love it. And also, against CBS broadcasters, we'll cross over again to college football. They love Alabama.
Love Alabama.
Alabama. Oh, look at Alabama. Oh, Alabama. Hey, that pass interference call. Oh, it wasn't really a pass interference call. They'll make it right back. It's just everything that happens that they do correctly or incorrectly can be brought back. It's okay. It's Alabama. So I'm not sure if this was set up or if it just that happened to be certain broadcasters have their affinity for these teams.
Think about this, though. On CBS, who are the two teams, one apiece, respectively, for collegiate football and the NFL? Alabama.
So, Alabama, obviously, for football.
And the NFL.
I mean, you'll get...
The New England Patriots.
Yeah, the Patriots, because they do the AFC games. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. There's like so many similarities between these two teams.
It's true. These guys grind it out. So JJ Redick and his defense.
Yes.
What was his stat line? Was his plus minus was 29?
Yeah, we could throw it up
29,
again. I have it right here. His plus minus was minus 29.
So the point I'm making is, yeah, there's veterans like Redick in there, but they're still quote unquote a young team.
Yes.
So again, you saw the bench for Cleveland. Those are, Channing Frye is not new to this game. They know how to win a game. So these are the struggles that I think the Sixers are going to have. And playing teams like this that know how to win.
I agree.
And know how to, honestly, use their advantage against them, which is just their experience.
I largely agree, but one thing that I don't like from reading these stat lines and also watching the game, more importantly, is that now we're branding the Cavaliers bench as like the best bench in the league. Like, wasn't this the problem throughout the playoffs and then even in the finals against a superior team to anybody in the Golden State Warriors, that their bench wasn't good enough? So suddenly
changed on the bench?
They have a great game. They outplay the Sixers bench, and now we're talking about how great their bench is. Like, here are the names. Kyle Korver, he's one of the best three-point shooters of all time. Fine. Again, he's someone who doesn't play defense, but he's superior offensively. Ante Zizic, I'm waiting. Channing Frye, a three-point shooter, not a good defender. Jeff Green, okay, he can play both ways. Amon Shumpert, kind of both ways. And then Dwayne Wade looks his age. I'm not buying the Cavaliers bench just yet. I still think that they need to make a move or two at the deadline. And Bleacher Report ran with this, and Nick Wrong ran with this previously as well, that they should trade for Boogie Cousins. If they do it, sure, but you'd have to give up the Brooklyn pick.
Absolutely.
I don't see them doing that. Would it help them get to the finals? Not get to the finals. Would it help them compete that much further and have, in my opinion, manipulate the system of instead of playing to Golden State's strengths, now Golden State is playing to your strength because you're adding somebody who is unworldly at his own position where he could handle the basketball. Granted, he gets in his own head like Rasheed Wallace does, and he would blow up a time or two. Having LeBron to mentor him would be huge. And more importantly, Draymond Green would not stand a chance against DeMarcus Cousins. So
And that's good.
do I think it's going to happen? No, but
Yeah, exactly.
you know.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Because then that's the thing, you have to think for the future. Like you said, they have no reason to give up the Brooklyn pick because they don't know what's going to happen with LeBron next either.
Exactly.
So this
It's your
mentoring,
insurance.
again, of Boogie Cousins being this LeBron mentor, which I don't even know how much that would work. It's not like Cousins is a rookie who doesn't know the game yet. I don't know how much it would really work for having this guy change him. It's who he is.
I agree with you, but here's my opinion on why I think it would work. Dennis Rodman was a fuckboy, all right? he was an asshole, all right? Now, he goes from Detroit, and then he finally makes his way to playing with Michael Jordan with the Bulls. They despised one another, but they respected the hustle, and they respected the grind of the season, and they respected the sanctity of winning a Larry O'Brien trophy. That is exactly what would happen. Again, it's a rough comparison, but from a mentality standpoint, it's a direct comparison. I understand they're different players,
Right.
but the psyche of those two, they fall in line with one another. And I believe that LeBron James would be that to a DeMarcus Cousins, to be able to bring him in, because he hasn't had that. He's had a revolving door of coaches. He had an owner in Sacramento who wanted to score 195 points and give up 185 every single game and play 5-on-4 defense. That's what he was dealing with. So now he goes to New Orleans. He's with this Kentucky guy with Anthony Davis, but they're really not winning a lot of games. There's no leadership on that team. And then you go to the alpha with LeBron James. That's why I think it would work.
And honestly, the other thing that the Cavaliers have to worry about, which I don't know how much it's being said, before you get to play Golden State for a 4th straight finals, you have to get through Boston. So how are you going to prepare to beat that team first? You know? So this isn't the same as it's been the past 2-3 years, where it's like, oh, we know who the finals are going to be from the East. We don't know that.
Right, but we know the two teams that will probably face off against one another if they're both healthy.
Right.
Yes, I agree with that as well. Alrighty, let us know your thoughts. Comment section below. Subscribe to 2x2 Sports. Alrighty. The live stream or wait for it on video on demand. This is something really interesting and I think is a narrative that is playing along right now that we should either diffuse or approve of. When LeBron James goes up against Ben Simmons, the immediate thing is, oh, Ben Simmons is the next LeBron James because of the physical build. My opinion. Do you disagree?
No, it's true.
Okay.
I see that's why, at least.
Yes, so, you know, we view everything in society from how can we relate it to something that we already know and make the comparison to sound smart. However, Brett Brown, along with a few others, excuse me, pregame had this to say. Brett Brown, Philadelphia 76ers head coach. You say compare him, Ben Simmons, to LeBron. Ask me later, in a few years from now. LeBron James was asked about it. You know, Ben is Ben, and I am who I am, and so on and so on. So you guys kind of do that comparison stuff. Here's Ben Simmons on his comparisons to LeBron. He's a Hall of Famer, if not the greatest to ever play the game. I'd be annoyed too if somebody was comparing me to a rookie that was just coming into the league. You know, he's having one of his best seasons so far. You shouldn't compare me to somebody like that. But I like how on the end he puts, not yet. Here were some of your responses.
What he thinks of him.
Where the fuck did my paper go? So I asked all of you, Ben Simmons can become the next LeBron. Your answer is what? I like this answer a lot. David said no, he will be Ben Simmons. And we'll be asking, who is the next Ben Simmons? I love that. Brett said, like most great players, LeBron is a 1 out of 1. Ben's like a humongous Jason Kidd. I disagree with that. We haven't seen the Jason Kiddness yet. Tip, I like this one as well, 1 of 2. No, LeBron James is the king, the end. This really isn't hard. Ask this in 2032. I'm gonna find you, Tip. If Ben is 29, 9, and 9 on 58%, 44% for 3 at worst, his second, third best ever, and then I think he had a second one. So far gone to 8 finals, 7 straight, carries team, conference, NBA, best in league. For greater than a decade, his play is similar, but LeBron is LeBron, case closed, and then he smacks himself in the face. My personal favorite is Tyler saying Prince.
Yeah.
Not a fan of that one. And then
you get this, right? Like, you don't agree?
What?
If LeBron is the king, he's the prince.
I wanted to go with like Purple Rain Prince.
Right.
So lastly, you guys weighing in, Jay Cinco said, Ben is a poor man's LeBron, which is not bad at all. The kid can ball, but he isn't the king, just like LeBron isn't MJ.
Jay Cinco has hit the nail.
Yeah.
On the head.
There were a few that hit the nail.
Because previous to that, of course, is to say, hey, is LeBron next MJ? Oh, MJ. They are two different guys. Again, the only comparison I think is the right comparison to make to Michael Jordan is Kobe Bryant. They played the same way. Yeah, Kobe's a little bit taller, barely, and just had a different kind of a slenderish type of build than MJ, but that style of play, man, it looked very similar. That's the type of thing. So when you start comparing LeBron to Michael Jordan, just because those are the two in our lifetimes where we're like, oh, greatest of all time here, greatest of all time here. That's the one line is the only thing that compares the two.
Right.
Their style and build and style of play just doesn't match up.
It's just a fun thing that we do as sports fans. That's all it is, and that's how we should all treat it, is as theater.
Yeah.
And I've said this many times, you can't compare one rap album to another rap album when one was in the 90s and the other was 2015. It's just different eras.
Yeah.
Like rap was so different along with basketball being so different. Like, are you gonna compare the ABA, or are you gonna compare when Bob Cousy played when there was no 3-point shot to the Golden State Warriors? Like, it's impossible. One thing that I just realized when you were going off about why we shouldn't compare is when J. Cole rapped about this in Sideline Story. It just came to my head. You never play me like LeBron versus Jordan. 20 years, wonder who they're gonna say was more important. Bold change of the game, came through and made a lane. Who's to say that who's greater? All we know is they ain't the same. Fucking amen, on top of amen. But hey, we're comparing. So through 18 games, here's LeBron James and Ben Simmons. Through LeBron's first 18 games of his career, Ben Simmons through 18 games of his career. Sorry if it's a little stretched out, by the way. I'm bad at graphics. So Ben Simmons' field goal percentage, higher. The free throw attempts, about the same. The free throw percentage, horrible. His rebounds, higher. His assists are higher because he can't shoot as well, which I'll get into in just a moment. The turnovers are about the same. Ben's playing a little less minutes per game, but they're taking almost the same field goal percentage. Before we move forward, is there anything that sticks out to you when looking at these?
This is why I laughed when you said it, the free throw percentage, of course. How much of a drop off that is. But also LeBron isn't considered the greatest free throw shooter even now. Like, it's not a guarantee when you see him go to the line that it's gonna happen. So, I mean, that's the thing also, and as we were mentioning right before we started this, Ben Simmons plays point guard, so your point guard's gotta be a good free throw shooter.
Yes.
Now, that has to change.
Doesn't always have to play point guard, of course, because they have TJ McConnell and a a few others. But yes, he's coming along like Giannis, except way earlier.
Yeah, and it was, again, it's different. It's different opponents, different eras, different guys they went up against. So it's hard. It's easy to compare and hard at the same time.
Here's another one that I like, and this is where they're shooting from on the court. This is LeBron in his career, okay? And excuse me, this is LeBron his first year. No, excuse me. Come on, Rick. This is LeBron in his career. This is Ben Simmons through the first 18 games.
Through his career.
I could not bring up exactly the first 18 games of shot distance, yada, yada. So obviously LeBron has improved greatly. This is Ben Simmons finishing at the rim to no surprise at all whatsoever. Because again, as I have said many times, look at the three-pointers.
Yeah.
He's not taking them because he can't make them. I think it's actually noble of him to not take them.
Right.
Because he knows his comfort zone, he knows where he succeeds and fails on the court, and he's not going to take his team out of a game.
So that's the thing. So depending on what style of system he's in from now until year 12, 15 of his career, then you wonder what type, again, is it a run and gun type of offense? Is it kind of offense where someone else is a shooter? Maybe a big time shooter comes in and doesn't even have to really focus on that part. He ends up on a Golden State Warriors type of system. So who knows what's gonna happen in his career where he doesn't need to be that guy that takes those shots, maybe he doesn't develop it, and that just doesn't come in. Again, as I forget which Twitter user's tweet this was, but went through all the things that LeBron has had to do as far as carrying a team, going to this many championships, and then being the one who dishes the ball and scores and chooses when he's gonna turn it on. He may not have to be that guy. He's playing with Joel Embiid.
Yeah, of course.
That's to me the focus of your
Embiid can shoot the three if he wants to. It's a drive and kick league. So like what I saw yesterday was on one play, drive and kick 4 times on one possession in a 24-second shot clock. By the time they brought it up past half court, it was probably at about 17. LeBron James, Channing Frye, J.R. Smith, and then LeBron James finally finding J.R. Smith on the baseline for a dunk. The same thing has happened with Ben Simmons because he knows that he succeeds at the rim, so guys are going to start playing him a little bit tighter. as Jay Crowder did on the 3-point line. And what did he do? Once he gets past, the double team comes over. That's when you hit a JJ Redick, a TJ McConnell,
Right.
a Bob Covington, Chicago. Unfortunately, they didn't make any of those shots, but nonetheless.
And by the way, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
For Ben Simmons to really have a dynamic aspect to his game, of course, develop the 3-point shot. You have to.
He will.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's year one. Yeah. Here's the
Especially
last
when
thing.
you're known to finish at the rim. Now they're worried
Yes.
about that, and you have that much more work.
So here's why this comparison is always going to be there. When they were coming out of high school, now remember, LeBron was 19 years old. Can you tell from that picture? 6'8", 240 pounds. And then, again, 19 years old. Ben Simmons, meanwhile, has a few more inches on him, 6'10", but also 240. The similarities are there. I completely understand. But what we need to do is start thinking about this in a little bit smarter fashion than just going off of body build and length. That's just my opinion. You agree?
And how it works, yeah. It's possible. We've seen it with these type of size guys to do, or even bigger,
right?
Obviously, to do this type of stuff. It's just a matter of developing and who you're going to work with and who brings that out of you.
Yes, very much so. So Brett Brown working with Ben Simmons, and of course, as we know, Tyronn Lue doesn't really have to work with LeBron James. I think he's there. Thoughts, comment section below. Subscribe to TYT Sports. We'll see you soon. Here's a really interesting story. J.R. Jackson, Rick Strom. So the Cleveland Browns suck.
The Cleveland Browns suck.
Like, they are bad at football. The records will also show how bad they are. In the AFC North with the Pittsburgh Steelers leading with a 9-2 record, no surprise, the Browns sit at the bottom with 0 wins. So here's the interesting part about this, Jay, is that Sam Darnold, quarterback for USC, potential #1 pick as well. Here's what Albert Breer wrote. This was back on November 7th, 2017. Quote, "Scouts who have been through there have told me that Darnold is a smart, conscientious kid with good family around him and will take everything." Oh, what a hard player. Including his play, his situation at USC, and yes, here's the big one, potential NFL landing spots into account in the decision. That said, as I've heard it from those close to him, Darnold has shut down any talk about the draft for now. Again, November 7, 2017, so then some reporters asked him about it. And Darnold on that report about being the #1 pick, quote, "I'm not sure where that came from, so I'm going to leave it alone." Smart answer. And then via ESPN this morning, "I didn't say anything about the Browns. I've never said anything bad about an NFL team. They know I would never say anything." Here is why Sam Darnold should pay heed to why, and I'm asking the question to JR, but also to you. Would you stay in school for another year and not get paid for what you can accomplish for a school who doesn't give a shit about you, or would you rather go to a Cleveland Browns team that is, by history standards, going to suck? Here are the standards. Pro Sports Chick had a Cleveland Browns jersey where she would put every single starter's last name on her jersey. Come on, Edwin, take a look. The list is bad. It's like really, 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 really bad.
Looks bad.
And the funny thing is, that's not even updated. Here's the updated list via Will Brinson at CBS. 28 different starting quarterbacks, all of them including Tim Couch, Ty Detmer, Doug Peterson, head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, Spurgeon Wynn, Kelly Holcomb, Jeff Garcia, Luke McCown, Trent Dilfer, Charlie Fry, Derek Anderson, great backup, Brady Quinn, also with CBS, Ken Dorsey, Bruce Gradkowski, Colt McCoy, Jake Delhomme, Seneca Wallace, Brandon Whedon, Thad Lewis, Jason Campbell, Brian Hoyer, Johnny Manziel, Connor Shaw, Josh McCown, Austin Davis, RG3, Cody Kessler, Deshaun Kaiser, Kevin Hogan. That is the updated list of 28 different starting quarterbacks. And that is since, I believe, we have it right here, 1999. Here's how bad they have been, Sam Darnold, in case you want to go to this team. Since 1999, they have 2 winning seasons. Since 1999, that came in 2002 and 2007. This team is god-awful. Would you want to go to this team? And then there's also a fan who put up this video on YouTube on why he continues to go to Cleveland Browns games, which is just preposterous to any right-thinking human being. Take a look.
We built you. Do you understand that it is actually statistically harder for a team to be this consistently bad than it is for them to occasionally accidentally be good? The probability is staggering. We don't even expect you to be good. We just want you to be watchable. Do you have any idea how low our expectations are? And listen, I know that there are way more important things in life than football, but you are supposed to be our pleasant distraction from those things. But all we do is pay you money to put us in a bad mood every week. You are a factory of sadness. I'll see you Sunday.
You are a factory of
All right.
sadness.
I had to throw all that in there. But with that being said, J.R. Jackson. By the way, in this example, all right, you're not a USC alum, okay? Take your bias aside, which is impossible for you to do.
I'm pretty good at that. I'm actually pretty good at that.
With USC?
Yeah.
You're good with it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So, with that being said, USC, would you stay one more year to not go to the Cleveland Browns?
Absolutely. I would.
You would?
I would.
Oh, man.
Well, for a couple reasons. That wouldn't even be the main reason, but that's definitely second.
What are the other reasons?
Well, because he's not ready, man. So, okay, this kid comes in.
But I'm just saying, if it's you, level playing field, just you, we're starting over, you're at USC, you could skip your senior year, and you're the consensus #1 overall.
Thing is, he'd be skipping his what, sophomore year? Junior year?
Junior year.
He's like, and then as far as starting goes, this is his freshman year fully. So last year he comes in because how much Max sucked. So
yeah. I'm blanking on the last name, but yeah.
Brown.
Max Brown, yes.
Came in and then looked great, and everyone had so much hope in Max Brown that once he came in and sucked, and then had this new kid come in and start who could move his feet like 2 steps to the left and right. I was like, oh my God, he can move. He doesn't stand there like a statue and get his head taken off.
Right.
So everyone had all this excitement for him, and this is the hard part. This is with Leinart, Carson Palmer, Mark Sanchez, everybody that's
John David Booty,
who's played recently for USC, is especially with the expectations before the 2 pro teams came back, is they're the professional team in LA. And LA is a huge city, obviously. People pay attention to football as much as people like to say, oh, nobody goes to football games or they leave early because there's so many things to do in LA. Bullshit. People go to football games and people stay at football games. So
the Rams aren't drawing, by the way. They should be drawing more with how well they're playing.
It'll take till next year.
It'll take till next year probably, but they should be drawing their playoff.
They have to. This would have to
their
do.
Offense is awesome.
This is the organization's fault. They need to start making this a place to be. When the new stadium opens,
I
it'll be
think
the place to be. It'll be full.
I agree.
Because the Coliseum is very uncomfortable. So when you're the quarterback of the pro team in LA before the pro teams came back, it makes sense to stay. You're still having fun. These guys, I don't know Sam Darnold's background, but you don't have to get out there and hurt and make your money and get out of whatever financial situation you're not able to really get out of. Take another year, and I think it'll make him a better pro. You need some time. If guys are ready straight out of high school or straight 1 year out in college, cool. He's not one of those guys to me. This season hasn't looked like a Heisman season the way they touted him at the beginning of the season.
Yes,
Sam Darnold, Heisman. You know what happened? No, this isn't always just his fault. It's a team game.
Yeah.
12 picks. His longest pass, 56 yards. Nice. His completion rate is 63.3%. Cool, fine. His quarterback rating, 147.4. If you can tell me what 147.4 means in quarterback rating, free t-shirt. So,
of your choice.
Yeah, so thing being, just give him some time. So if you go to the Browns who already dismantle any decent quarterback, and I think you still need time to become a pro quarterback, you're gonna get destroyed.
Right, but JR. Let me bring this back. I'm asking you what you would do.
If I was him?
Yes. I appreciate everything that you said. I think you're speaking
I
truth.
rambled, but
I'm
it made some sense.
You're in his position. You could skip this year, this next year. You can probably go to the Cleveland Browns. Just in this box of a scenario.
Absolutely. Again, it's all for the same reasons. I would stay right where I am.
Okay. I'm not trying to pull a Joakim Noah. I'd rather be in other places than Cleveland. All right. Would I skip another year of college? Granted, you're in LA. Would I skip another year of college where anything could happen to me? I could suffer a cracked vertebrae if I just bend the wrong way. Yeah, I'd take the money.
Yeah.
Immediately.
The problem is
it's a no-brainer.
You take the money, but then when you go to Cleveland, you will definitely suffer a cracked vertebrae.
That's fine. All you're doing in Cleveland is auditioning to be a backup. That's what happens with every single starter that has gone there. Every single one. It's a great audition to see, can you get signed by another team to be the second string guy and not suck as much as your predecessors? That's what it is.
But I'll tell you the mentality of football players. Now I get where you come from because this is as you. But football players, they don't go into anything thinking they're going to get injured or else you will get injured. So the thought isn't, oh, I better hurry up and do this before I get injured or I might get injured. Because if you think that way, you will get injured.
No, it's not a matter of thinking you'll get injured. It's just a matter of, do I get the easy payday right now on a rookie deal? Granted, you can max out because of the Sam Bradford rule where they can negotiate any ridiculous contract where starting quarterbacks who have been better than that rookie are getting paid less because the money has been so different as time has evolved, obviously, as time has gone on. So the question is, would I take the money instead of playing another year, potentially hurting my stock as well? Yeah, I'd take the money, I'd go to Cleveland, I'd last 3 years, and then I'd be out.
He looked also great last year because he had veteran wide receivers, one of which is a couple of which are in the NFL now. So that helped him. He's got young receivers. Like, all that will come together. I think he'll have a much better season next year.
You could have Josh Gordon, by the way. He could be coming back as well.
Everything will help him, man.
Just a thought. Just a thought. Cleveland Browns, yes or no? By the way, the New York Giants could be drafting him as well if the Browns pass on him.
Right.
Which is pretty cushy.
Right. And the thing is, the Browns, I don't know if they've changed their direction on this, but they'll take the young, hot quarterback that's popular because they've done it. We saw that lady's jersey. They weren't all young.
She retired the jersey, by the way. I should note that. I think she retired after 2015.
She started tripping her. She started stepping on the bottom of it on the floor, and she'd walk with it.
It's microcosmic of the Browns.
Yeah. So it's worth it to stay. It really is. I think so. I hope he does.
Of course, you hope he does.
And not even for
fair.
USC like glory or nothing. I mean, specifically for him, I don't think he's ready.
Understood. I'm just
I understand the question.
A bipartisan, Jacory, would you take the money with a shitty team like the Cleveland Browns, or would you go back to USC for one more year? Jacory, no allegiances at all to any team whatsoever.
No.
Sir? Sir? Bueller?
So what's the question?
We can't hear you.
Is your studio speaker up?
Great shirt, though.
So
glad we matched.
Thanks, man. So what's the question?
Forget it, man. Forget it. Edwin. Say it loud, say it proud. Awesome. All right. So let us know. Thoughts in the comments section below. Subscribe to TYT Sports. Oof. Kevin Durant still doesn't understand why people hate him. At least that's what I learned partially from this article. Look, it was a really good write-up, a really good open forum type of conversation, like we do here. Sarah Jackson to my left. So, Logan Murdoch is a writer for the Mercury News. It was cool. It was humbling. I thought of him, and to hear Kevin Durant speak on social issues. But the one thing that obviously stood out to me was that he still doesn't understand why people like him. So
don't like him.
By people don't like him. Yes, what did I say?
I thought you said people like him. I thought you said that. There's some people who like him.
There's some people who like him, mainly who are in Oakland. So, I, by the way, don't give a shit. Like the burner Twitter, I thought was hilarious. So, with all of that being said, here is what he said to Logan Murdoch, excuse me. When you signed here, this is Murdoch, you had people disrespecting your name, burning your jersey as a... Before I even get to that, burning your jersey, I think we actually have that video. Take a look. Yes. People are mad. KD leaves OKC. Him.
Nasty don't play no fucking games with KD.
Dead.
Fuck KD.
Yep, they were pissed. So in case
those are someone's kid's shoes, man. Let your kid wear some shoes, some sneakers, man. Who cares?
Seriously, you paid for them.
Come on.
So as a black man getting vilified over your personal decision, how did that make you feel? He said, I really didn't think it was that serious until I started to see the backlash and see the hateful things that people were saying. It's just continually bad. It's just still hate. It is just pure hate. And then they go on to say they don't even know you like that. And he goes, no, they don't. I mean, if you're not around me every day, you don't know my routine, you don't know my reaction to shit, you don't know how I view things, you don't know me. You might see me play every day, but you don't know me really. That right there, it took me a couple weeks to just be like, hold up, this shit is not real at all. And then he said, I understand in a basketball sense that you want to be so loyal to your team and you want to feel like you're a part of something because everybody wants to feel like they're a part of something. So I understand that part, but it's got to the point now, it's like, now it's getting big. Like, come on, man, what are we even talking about this for? This is basketball. I'm enjoying myself playing basketball. What you say and what you do is not affecting my work. That's the most important thing, is the work. Now it's more so I'm looking at everybody else like they're weird and they're corny, and now because it's been a year straight of you calling me all types of names, telling me this, telling me that, because I decided to play basketball in another place. Look how stupid that sounds when we got bigger issues going on. We got people that need help, that need our attention. We're focusing on. It's easy to lose focus as humans, so easy. And we're focusing on this. I'm going to be here for a long time, yada, yada. Thoughts? That was long.
Wow.
And he rambled.
So this is exactly, not the rambling part, but exactly, it's long. Kevin Durant cares a lot, and it's okay. A lot of these guys care a lot. And we're living in an era, imagine if Michael Jordan, I mean, even sooner, Shaq during player years, or Kobe, if he was actually on social media, dealt with how the level of hate. This isn't new. So Kevin Durant thinks, I don't know, I'm putting words in his mouth, but from that, it seems that he thinks he's the first person to get this level of hate. It happens all the time. It's not new. Sports fans are fickle. Sports fans burn jerseys.
You think he thinks that he's the first person?
He's like, I don't get how everyone hates me so much. It's been a year straight, man. It's been a year straight, KD. It's been 1 year straight. Some guys deal with it their whole 15, 17-year career. Kobe Bryant. I don't even like Kobe, but he dealt with hate his entire career before social media, so maybe he didn't see it as much. And these kids, I'm calling them kids because they grew up in the social media, or they're adults in the social media era before all this was the norm. And we talked about it at the beginning. Reads every hate post.
Yes.
Pays attention to it. If he sees KD, you suck, oh, fucking asshole, he reads it and he takes it in. I think, more assumptions on my part, he's the type of guy who doesn't let things bounce off of him.
No, not at all.
He absorbs it all, man. The burner Twitter account you were talking about, he has to respond.
Which we have, and when, just to refresh everybody's memory, when he didn't switch his Twitter, man, I respect the hell out of you, but give me one legitimate season, yada, yada. He didn't like the organization or playing for Billy Donovan. His roster wasn't that good. It was just him and Russ, and then he had one more, I believe, where he said, imagine taking Russ off that team, see how bad they were. KD can win a championship with those cats. And then, of course, for OKC to troll him, they all were cats in like Instagram posts and shit like that, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, no, but that's his opinion, right? And these are things that guys can't say. If a reporter in the offseason says, so you decided to move on and go to a different team. what happened? If he said, man, Billy Donovan can't coach, man, I can't win with those cats. Oh, he's a demon for the rest of his career.
Right.
So he has to respond that way. What he should do, you got your friends, you got your boys around you. Voice it to them.
But sometimes that's not enough.
You got to keep it within your own circle, man. That's the way anybody who's in the limelight now has to do. You can't let everyone else know that they're affecting you, because then as soon as you let them know that, it will affect you for the next year. People read that and they're like, oh, it's been a year now and he still cares? More cupcakes. Because when he came out there and beat the shit out of, damn near single-handedly, beat the shit out of OKC on the cupcake night, and then silenced everyone, you shut up and you move on. You showed, remember when he would return to OKC last season? It was crazy, oh, cupcake, 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 cupcake.
Yep.
And then Draymond got into it too. He said, I like these cupcake shirts. I paid someone to give me a cupcake shirt. I like it. Draymond let it flow off of him because it wasn't.
Completely.
It's that you have to respond that way. If you let them know that it gets to you, they will do it more. So they're like, oh, I got his attention. KD read my. People who hate him actually love him.
So then they'll follow it up with 40 more tweets.
It's a weird hate-love thing. When a celebrity or a well-known figure responds to some no-name online who hates them, and they go, hey, well, F you, man. They go, oh, shit, he responded. Now I'm really going to type to him because he's reading what I'm saying.
So here's my question to you. I took this as the entire thing, okay? The entire article and the entire interview as honesty. That's just how I saw it.
It was.
However, are you in a way penalizing him for being completely transparent with how he truly feels?
And by saying he should stop?
Yes.
No, it's just if he wants it to stop. This is the vehicle to get to it, to at least slow down or to not see it as much. Don't let them know. But it's too late now. No one's ever going to believe that he doesn't care because he's told us many times over that he cares. So
what's the difference
That's
then?
your life now.
I guess my question is, so what's the difference between responding to haters even after you win, like Kevin Durant has done, and responding to haters like Draymond Green has done? Like, there's the difference obviously with the change of scenery because Draymond was drafted by Golden State, and there's this fictitious narrative that a player has to fall in line and be assembled and joined at the hip with the team that drafted him.
Right.
When that is not true at all. Like, free agency is there for a reason. The players should go get paid because the owners are reaping the benefits of never having to step on the goddamn court in the first place. So I'm okay with free agency. And the whole reason that people are mad is because they thought that he was just a different guy. And that's on us. That's not on him.
We make assumptions about athletes all the time.
All the time. It's on us to. It's on us, and we should actually be mad at ourselves for being like, oh, we didn't think that he was that loyal. Tough shit. Who cares? He's allowed to do it. With
Absolutely.
the CBA in place, he's allowed to do whatever he wants. So look, again, I'm going back to this. What is the difference then between when Draymond Green retweets somebody or quote tweets and is like, fuck you or something? He doesn't say that, but like, you understand what I'm saying. And what Kevin Durant is saying now.
Because I feel like, maybe I don't see enough of the way Draymond does it. I feel like he acknowledges them, but it seems like he doesn't care what they say. They say it and he's like, oh, saw that, whatever. Or, hey, or makes a joke back at them. So they feel like an idiot. And then his fan base, Draymond's, now they're all on top of this one guy. And it's just, the no-name guy doesn't win. In this scenario, the no-name people keep winning on KD because KD keeps letting them know, man, I got home and I thought about that for the next 5 days.
That's the point.
They're like, got him. Sure did. And it's almost, we did the video a long time ago about his tattoo. And he responded to TYT Sports.
Did.
He responded to us before.
Before anybody goes to it, I'm going to say right now, as many people should on this medium, it was not JR, I believe. It wasn't me. It was Jank and Ben, and the facts were wrong. It was wrong, and it was an ugly clip, okay? And I do not condone what they said because it was just wrong.
Because I was there.
So he was right in being mad. It probably wasn't the best look to respond on Twitter. Yes.
Who cares? Because I think his response was, who are these clowns at TYT
Yeah, I'm gonna
Sports?
look it up right now.
It was, and then, you know what happened? I think it was both Ben and Jank went, oh, look, KD responded. That's what happens. And these guys, Ben and Jank, aren't even like a couple of Twitter eggs. We actually had a following and they were talking about this guy. So
here's what he said. At 11:22 p.m. on September 14th, 2011, who are these clowns at TYT Sports? Anybody know?
He response to everybody, man.
So even again, I'm not condoning what they said. I think that it was tone deaf and wrong. But in a way, through this Clay Travis model of just being a dick, did TYT Sports win in that instance?
They have, yes. Yes, if that was their intention, which their intention was just to talk about it, and they had no idea how clueless they were being. But it ended up going that direction. And we will always remember that he called TYT Sports clowns. We'll always remember that.
Were you on this?
That's the way it works. Yeah, I was in it too.
I think this might be past the point of like wins
Anna,
and
Ben, and
losses,
Jank,
though.
by the way. Anna, Ben, and Jank.
I think this like dudes come from all over the place to play in the NBA, from all over the world. At some point, you're gonna get different types of dudes. Kevin Durant is just a different kind of dude. He's just a sensitive dude. He's not the angry, aggressive type of cat that is on the court that you usually see. I think that's perfectly okay. That's fine for him to be like that. And like I said, like this isn't about wins or losses on like social media anymore. I think he's honestly appealing like, hey, yo, like as a human being, like I have had hate flowing towards me for the past year straight. Like people are burning my jersey. Like that's, I feel you, like everyone has like criticism or whatever, but like that's kind of something visceral when somebody like paid to support you and throw like money into your brand and your name, and now they are setting on fire. Like that's kind of like you like, I don't know. I think you're kind of being a little cavalier saying that you would dismiss that and just be like, oh,
You have
whatever.
to.
Like that shit kind of hurts, bro. That shit kind of hurts.
It happened to LeBron too. You know what? They burned
happen
his
to LeBron.
Cleveland.
Nice white, by the way.
They burned his jersey after he made the decision. ESPN, who hosted the event for where LeBron's gonna go.
They interviewed the people, right? Who burned his jersey?
No, I don't even, maybe they did.
I think they did.
But they had exclusive rights to the decision. Put ESPN in the corner and lit it up like it was like the NBA Finals or something. And then after that, LeBron, I'm sure, was hurt by that. It's his hometown on top of it. KD ain't even from OKC. If DC did that, maybe he could have some, man, my city hates me. LeBron's city hated him. And he came back. Dude, that was the only thing I disagree with LeBron. I was like, don't go back to those losers. That's the only thing I disagreed with him on. But he went so far above it. They burned his jerseys. He went and won a few championships, came back, and they bought his shit again.
Yes,
that's how fickle fans are. So you can't let them know they got to. Of course they got to LeBron.
Look, man, fan is short for fanatic. People are insane with their sports teams. People should be more insane about the politics of America than their fucking sports teams. Another argument for another day. I completely understand where Jacory is coming from, but I'm gonna go back to this, and this is my default with this. We were wrong as sports fans to assume we knew who Kevin Durant was. What he wanted to do is, and granted, they were so close to beating Golden State, but it doesn't matter where he went. It doesn't matter.
People said it mattered.
It's his right. Yes, and I heard
because it was the team that beat them.
I heard this from somebody that I worked with about how pissed off he was because it was Golden State. And they were within 1/4 of beating Golden State. Doesn't matter who the hell he goes to. Doesn't matter what team he goes to. He has that right because it's in the CBA for him to do it. We were just wrong, and we shouldn't assume anymore that we know a thing about these athletes. That is where the assumption goes wrong and how we assume stuff.
I don't think that's where his issue lies, though. I think where he's
No, it's different. It's different.
Like it's
what I'm
the
saying is
hate.
different.
Like he's cool, like with you know what I mean, the criticism or like wherever he's going, like, but. I imagine like the Chappelle Show skit where it's like, yo, hey, Kevin Durant, fuck you, man. Like, yo, bro, I'm shopping with my kids right now, man.
Right.
Like, hey, KD, you shouldn't have left, you dumb fucking N-word. Like, there's like, he's like, you know what I mean? Like, he probably shortened it because he's on TV and he's dealt with this for over a year, he said. But hate, like when he said it's just pure hate, like I hear the human side of that where he has had hate flowing towards him and he's just kind of like done with it. Like,
right.
You got to understand where you are, man.
It's different strokes. Like we opened up this entire live stream with JR saying like, I don't really give a shit. Like if I see one negative word, it bounces right off of me. It's different strokes for different folks. People are not cut from the same cloth. Kevin Durant, as Jacory said, and it's true, is sensitive about this stuff. That's fine. But I think I speak for all three of us when it's like, just don't give the haters any attention. Yeah. Because then they're just going to latch on to it over and over.
We did know who KD was. I read like a part of a GQ like interview with him. This was still in OKC, and it was a normal GQ profile, and he said, "I'm so competitive This is before he went to Golden State, which will
I
tell you why he
think I
won.
remember
I'm
this.
so competitive when I'm watching a game where I'm not involved in. I want to see both teams lose. I don't want to see anybody win.
Yeah, that's Jordan-ish.
He's crazy competitive, which is why he's as good as he is. I got to be honest. That's one of the reasons guys get it to the level of accomplishment they get in athletics is to be that competitive. He doesn't want to see anybody win. So when he sees an opportunity where he can win and he has a really good chance, he's going to take it. Many of us wouldn't have. LeBron wouldn't have. LeBron went back to the shit city that hated him and decided to win a championship with them and did. So everyone loves LeBron now again. Like, oh, he went back home after they hated him.
But if he didn't win, would he be as beloved? I say no.
Still would be, but not as, because it didn't.
No.
Success always wins. But if he didn't, it'd be like,
He
oh,
would
well,
just
at least
be
it
viewed
was.
as the guy who needed Dwayne Wade in order to win. That's what he would be
But
viewed
then they
as.
would still be like, well, it was honorable for him to go back to Cleveland, back to where they hate him. They would at least give him that.
It's a story. That's how I view it.
All I'm saying is you can be sensitive, but if you don't want to keep getting your feelings hurt, stop giving the ammunition. That's all.
I agree. To your Kevin Durant point, citing the GQ article, it immediately went off of my mind. Again, being from Chicago, like I've heard so many stories about Michael Jordan and his competitiveness. And one that I point towards is that Scottie Pippen and a few other Bulls beat him at ping pong. Like he fucking sucked at ping pong. So what did he do?
He went and hired like a ping pong pro to teach him.
All he did, sorry, Penn, all he did was play ping pong all the time. And then it turned into Michael dominating us at ping pong and talking shit in the process. No one wanted to play anymore. Like he put in hours and hours and hours of literally playing against the wall or like turning up the table halfways and playing with himself. That didn't sound good. But like playing with himself, again, didn't sound good, in order to beat the guys that were beating him. He's so obsessive about winning. And that's exactly what Kevin Durant is and how I see it as well.
Yeah.
I agree with you. All right, long clip. Again, this JR would say, if you made it this far, give us a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to 2x2 Sports. We return here on DYT Deportes. J.R. Jackson, Rick Strom. This occurred in the Boston Celtics game last night. Doesn't matter who played. All that matters was who was in the crowd. Take a look. That's it.
The Celtics are the best team in the East, and this fan is helping prove that. They're winning in all aspects. So, you know, guys go to games and always have this weird, not weird, but this criticism. If you go to a game and you decide to paint your whole fucking face, or if you're a Raiders fan and you put on the spike shoulder pads and the Darth Vader mask, whatever the hell you guys do, and then you get your ass kicked, you got to walk out of the stadium still. So whatever you have, you got to walk out and either hide it or put down the thing on your chest that said, "Go, my team, go." And then you look like an ass if you get your ass beat. This guy, it's real easy, and the reason they do it is to get on TV. Number one, check, got it, got that.
Well, he also has a skill.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta do it a certain way.
I just see this meme going around like on Instagram where it's like, job interviewer, tell us your best quality. And then it's like this guy. and then the final meme is like some Shutterstock guy being like, you have the job.
It works. It totally works. So the main thing is get on TV. He got on TV.
He got on TV.
It may be a thing where he can do it every time and they will find him. Because the same thing, the arena guys and the camera guys and whoever's running the production are like, let's find interesting fans. That's all they care about. We want to make this an interesting broadcast.
100%.
If you can be interesting, you're there.
Or if you're a Cubs broadcast, what you look for is any good-looking girl in the bleachers.
Well, I thought Cubs broadcasts look for any old person in the bleachers and talk about how long it's been since they've seen a fucking World Series victory. At least they don't have to do that anymore. At least I don't have to hear that shit anymore. Oh, look at this World War II vet. He went to war, survived, came back, yet his only regret is not seeing the Cubs win. He wished he would have been dead a long time ago until the Cubs win a World Series. I'm so glad that's over. I was rooting for the Cubs 2 years ago just so I won't have to hear that shit anymore. Oh, look at her. Oh, Gretchen sitting in the front row. She's been in these seats since 1912. She's seen grandkids die before her.
Oh my God.
Her grandkids' last words were,
R.I.P. the grandkids.
Grandma Gretchen, just tell me about the World Series.
God. Even Annie's like, this is too heavy.
Fucking Cubs. Maybe they'll start showing young folks now.
Fucking Cubs.
Whew. Okay, I'm done.
I'm not. No. And then what did I? Alrighty, somehow we return. JR.
Oh yeah, we're on live stream, aren't we?
Rick, we are on live stream. We appreciate everybody watching. Now you're gonna get a look at this. This is Zaire Wade. He's 15 years old, and he's awesome. Take a look.
How tall is young Zaire?
D-Wade making sex sounds back there?
No, I think it was his friend.
Was it?
I assume.
It reminds me of that guy on Instagram who like will look at anybody, like, here, pick up these papers. Like, oh, he's stealing. Oh.
Or it's like a settlement. Ooh, ooh.
Yeah. Oh, found my boner. Okay, so,
first of all,
another video of
yes,
Zaire also looking awesome at doing basketball stuff. I mean, look, a lot of people are going to be like, he sucks.
First of all, he looks like he's 6'4".
Yeah.
Like if you look how far his feet are, if you run it whenever you want to.
Also took a picture with Bronny James. Oh, here we go.
Bottom of his feet are off the ground. Look at the distance. It's not that far off the ground, which means man is 6'5", and he's getting to the rim that easily.
It's casual.
And well, how tall is D-Wade? 6'4", 5 maybe?
No,
3?
he's like 6'5", I'd say.
Okay, I thought he was a little shorter than that. So I was just wondering where the jeans are coming from because Jesus, kid is 15 and this big.
Well, here's a look at Bronny, who is taller.
Young Bronny, 13? I don't think he's taller. Can't be.
Bronny? No, he's definitely not taller.
Bronny
Sorry.
James, yeah, a little shorter.
Bronny's shorter. Bronny with the Odell Beckham hair.
So, I mean, if these two don't look like...
It's very obvious which one is Dwayne Wade's
Exactly,
son.
and also bronze too, because I was thinking that before. If you look at, again, we looked at the rookie picture or high school picture of LeBron. He looks just like him. Bron is...
Do we still have that, Corey?
From when we put those stats
profile?
up. He looks just... I didn't realize it till later.
I'm trying to find it. I don't remember where it was. It was the draft. If we could go back to back, the draft profile of LeBron James, 6'8", 240. He was massive.
This is ridiculous, isn't it?
19 years old, he's 6'8", 240.
So imagine you have a child that's been in your... He looks a lot like him, right?
So there's LeBron.
Come on. That's
One
the
more
same...
time?
That's kind of the same face.
Yeah, it is. Solid stuff, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zaire's legit, man. He's already got offers.
I mean, yeah, he's got ups.
Kentucky and Duke. He's
So
gonna be legit.
and I watch, you watch a couple of everyone's seen the highlight clips of LeBron's kids. So this is one of those things where I think we were talking about, again, KD and hate. People probably don't like this. Or they're like, these two teammates, everybody knows LeBron and D-Wade are like best friends. And then so now their kids are like best friends. And we're looking at this is gonna happen again. Now their kids are both gonna go to the NBA in the next 10 years, and now we're gonna deal with them for the next 20 years. I think it's great, it's fun. I like seeing stuff like this. And all I'm saying is little Zaire, just work on everything else, that's all. Because I worry sometimes. This is the old
Work
man
on the J.
Work on everything else, which of course, you got professional.
You got
professional parents, they're probably telling you that too.
Yeah, he has one of the most effective and efficient fadeaway jumpers for a father that you could possibly have. Yeah. So I think he's gonna be A-okay on that front.
I like this type of stuff. This is fun.
Yeah, it's fun, but like seriously, people in the comments like, oh, he sucks. He's 15. He's doing reverse dunks at 15. Like I could only do that on Nerf hoops.
Oh, I wish I had the picture of me in high school dunking. It was like a still picture of me in the air. Oh, I wish I had prepared for this. But it was like one of the first and last times I dunked. So seeing a kid, I was like 17, 18
J.R.
years old
Jackson bought his high school jersey from his high school.
I didn't buy it.
$50.
Took it.
You stole it.
Hey, it was mine. So actually it went back to its rightful owner. I let other scrubs
Am I guilty
borrow
by
it
association?
In the meantime, you know about it. You haven't turned me in.
Thanks for watching.
It's a very strange way to
preventative.
phrase that thing. I don't know. Really
well, they're not allowed to actually say the word in the EPA and things like that. He said, causality is something outside of my ability to analyze right now. Lucky for him, there's a lot of climate scientists who could provide that analysis if you would say that it's a real thing. Now, additionally, when the White House press secretary was asked if Irma and Harvey, which have both been thought to have been intensified by climate change, had caused Trump to reconsider his position. Now, if you guys don't remember, his position is that climate change is a Chinese hoax, and he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord. She said that he had not. I don't think that it's changed over the last several weeks, even though he's been the one that's been saying that these hurricanes are epic and historic. Now, further, in an interview with CNN, Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Scott Pruitt said, to have any kind of focus on the cause and effect of the storm versus helping people or actually facing the effect of the storm is misplaced. He further said it was insensitive. That is like saying that, like, I'm trying to think of like an example. Like if like there's ISIS beheading, right? Like let's look at, we need to really be focusing on the beheading, not ISIS.
Yeah, the type of knife they used or whatever. I mean, conservatives love to do this. I mean, they do this exact thing whenever there's a mass shooting. You know, like it's like in the immediate wake of the mass shooting, they don't want to talk about gun control. They say they want to politicize something. It's it's a very convenient sleight of hand that they do with climate change, where they say, you know, in the wake of a massive storm that has caused. I mean, the last thing I think Irma has caused. The last figure I saw was like something like 22 deaths or something crazy. You know, it's not time to talk about like politicize this. It's not time to talk about. We got to focus on, you know, whatever, blah 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 blah. But then when there are no storms, and everyone's like, okay, there's no, you know, like then they go, wait, where are the storms? Where's the climate change? It's, you know, like it's like a very convenient kind of catch-22. In which is just like totally maddening. Yeah,
it's convenient maybe for their talking points, but not convenient for all their constituents, or having to flee their homes and are facing potentially death or all of this damage, right? And we've talked about this in think tank episode after think tank episode, but there are, you know, there is scientific evidence that these hurricanes are exacerbated by climate change. Nobody's saying that climate change is the sole cause of the hurricanes. Nobody's saying that, but they're exacerbated, right? Because these are these like thermodynamic, you know, functions or whatever. When you have rising levels in sea level and also rising temperatures of the sea, that is going to make these storms much bigger, much more intense. Further, like if there's, you know, elongated seasons and things like that we're experiencing with climate change, that's going to elongate hurricane season and have more damaging effects. And we need to, like, I understand that. I think for some people it's like, okay, the you know, rising levels of 2 degrees Celsius. And even though that's a very tangible number, that feels very
minor.
Yeah, it feels minor. It doesn't feel as like impactful. It's a huge, huge deal. But when you're seeing these epic and historic hurricanes that we are even acknowledging that are epic and historic, and you're seeing all these people dying and these people suffering and these cities that are underwater, like
my city.
Yeah, your city is underwater. Like, I don't know how you ignore the causality or the you know, the driving force for a lot of these you know, natural disasters that are just becoming more disastrous because we are just emitting a lot of
the frustrating thing with climate change is that, like, you know, like if you look at what scientists are saying, like they say, like, yes, they don't know whether this specific storm, like they don't have enough data to deal like in the narrow sense with this specific storm, right? Because climate change is a massive phenomenon that has multi-leveled effects, and you know, and like there's a million little factors that go into any one thing. So you can't. It's very difficult to make like a very clear, just kind of like X plus Y equals Z. You know, like it's just like it's a very like it's a giant global system, right? But it is clear that warmer waters do intensify hurricanes. So we don't want warmer waters if we don't want intense hurricanes. Maybe it is possible that with colder waters there will be a massive storm. That is possible, but it is less likely.
And it's less, it's not as likely to be as intense, right? So these are important things to think about. And I'm curious what you guys think. Is now the time to be talking about climate change? Or do you think that it's insensitive to the people who are suffering from these hurricanes?
No, it's the sensitive thing.
I want you guys to let us know. And we will be talking about porn when we come back from the break. So I'm sure you're gonna wanna stick around for that. And I think you might be a little surprised by my stance about the recent political porn scandal.
You'll also be surprised by her porn consumption habits.
All right, well.
Sorry.
All right,
they're a little weird.
See you soon. All right, welcome back to Think Tank, and welcome back to Nando porn shaming me.
I'm not porn shaming.
You just said that they were weird, okay? Everybody can have their proclivities when it comes to porn, and we don't want to shame anybody for their fantasies.
I'm sorry.
And you don't know what I watch. You don't know my life.
Oh yeah, I've been following your Twitter account.
That's why we're moving into clowns, because clown porn is my thing. Now my mom's gonna hear that, and things are gonna get awkward. All right, so now let's talk about, shift away from me and talk about Ted Cruz.
Yes.
Ted Cruz has been involved in a recent porn scandal. You might have seen it trending on Twitter because on September 11th, someone with access to Ted Cruz's personal Twitter account liked a post by another account named Sexual LL post, which included an attached pornographic video. Now, his communication director, Catherine Frazier, said that the offensive tweet posted on Ted Cruz's account earlier has been removed by staff and reported to Twitter. You can see the post here. I believe it was something like MILF hunting or something.
Yeah, it was a woman masturbating while another couple had sex.
Yeah, and so he didn't repost it, he liked it. Or somebody with access to his accounts liked it. Now, I wanna go back a little bit because, he said that it's a staffing error and that it was inadvertent, whatever. Like, I don't really give an F, to be honest with you. Like, Ted Cruz, watch your porn. If you're into MILFs, have at it. A porn is a very healthy habit.
Ted Cruz can masturbate on 9/11 just like anybody else.
Yeah, I don't really care. I don't care that it was, frankly, I don't care that it was September 11th. I don't care that he was watching porn. I think it's great. Maybe it'll make him loosen him up a little bit and he'll be a little bit more normal when it comes to his policies. But the problemo is that Cruz has been a fierce advocate against marriage equality and once urged people to fall to their knees and pray against same-sex marriage legalization as the Supreme Court was ruling on the topic back in 2015. He has also worked to uphold a Texas law that prohibits the sale of dildos in order to protect public morals. And in 2012, before Cruz entered the Senate, the Texas GOP platform advocated for abstinence-only education. All right, so here's the issue, is that Ted Cruz, semi-okay with, hating on other people's sexuality and trying to literally put government into their lives and prevent them from doing that. And then
prevent them from buying dildos.
Seems a little hip. Well, because that's for women. It's okay if he does it, because he's a man. But if a woman wants to have sexual satisfaction, no, that's not okay. So basically,
the
that's why
idea of Ted Cruz trying to satisfy a woman is giving me it's making me shudder on the inside.
I'm sure they have a beautiful. If he has, if he is watching this porn, maybe he has a very healthy sexual relationship with Heidi.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? More power to them. I encourage that. But what I don't encourage is being a hypocritical asshole.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's the issue, is that you can't try to control other people's sexualities, and period. And then additionally, also be exploring your own. You know what I mean? Pick a lane, bro.
Yeah, and there's a lot of questions that arise from this incident. It was one of my favorite incidents of 2017. I've greatly enjoyed it. Greatly enjoyed Ted Cruz's, being in the eye of the storm over this. One, is one big question, and Libby Watson over at Splinter has done a deep investigation into this, is who actually liked the tweet? Was it Ted Cruz himself? And who was it? She actually narrowed it down to about 3 possible people.
Okay, who were the 3 people?
I don't remember their names, but it's basically because there's 2 different accounts. There's the Senate account, for his because he's a U.S. senator, and then there's his personal, which is run by the campaign. It's they always keep them separate to avoid any sort of conflict of interest over something
porn.
Yeah. So she looked at the people who were on the payroll of his campaign. At the time of the liked tweet on September 11th, 12:30 a.m. And she narrowed it down to basically.
It was 12:30 a.m.?
Yeah, it was late at night.
Okay, so it's sort of September 11th. You didn't fully understand this.
It was a very rough day for all of us.
Yeah.
And so either it was himself, which is possible. It's possible that Ted Cruz is looking at porn through Twitter as a way to avoid, search browser history.
Well, I was gonna ask you, who watches porn on Twitter?
No one. But what you're asking me, you don't.
Well, I watch porn, but not on Twitter.
Right. No, neither do I.
That's a weird
I suspect if you're watching porn on Twitter, it's to avoid any browser history issues, where you type in, because on Twitter it doesn't work like that. But Ted Cruz is an old man, so maybe he doesn't realize that liking a tweet is a public thing.
Or maybe it was by accidental, you know what I mean?
Yeah, he got a little excited and and so, but then there's also one of his campaign's communications advisor. There's this other guy, I forgot what he was. There's one guy who seems to be very much in control of his Twitter account, and he brags about it on his own social media sometimes, about how he tweets, and especially with regards to Deadspin, they had like a little run-in. So it's likely him. There's a woman who tweeted out at 2 a.m. that night, addressing. She was up and tweeting. So questions are arising.
What is it with Republicans tweeting in the middle of the night? They need some sleep. Sleep is very important.
It is.
Do you know
that's
what
the real problem here. Ted Cruz not getting enough sleep.
That's what I'm really worried about. Okay, so that's interesting. So there could be other people. I don't care if it's him. I don't care if it's other people.
But Ted Cruz, it's just he's a hypocritical asshole.
That's the problem with it. And frankly, if you are working for somebody who has that too, you presume that maybe they'd be in line with their sexual hatred or something like that. I don't know. Let us know what you guys think about this, because I say have at it, Ted Cruz. Just don't. Maybe this will be a nice little learning lesson. You won't be an asshole to other people's sexual orientations or sexual desires. I don't know. Let us know what you think. And when we come back, we will be talking about clowns and how they might be getting themselves out of work because of it. Welcome back to Think Tank for our third and final story of the day. And luckily, it's about clowns. Now, after the release of the It movie, clowns are fearful for their jobs because kids might be fearful of clowns. Now, there was a show that's basically like Good Morning America. It's called This Morning in the UK. And they interviewed some professional clowns about some of the struggles they've been going through in the aftermath of the movie It, which brought in an insane amount of money its first weekend. So clearly people are very interested in seeing this movie. Let's see what they had to say.
It must have an effect on your business. I mean, do you find that now, because of this, people want less kids' parties involving clowns, or is it the same?
I represent Clowns International. Andrew represents the World Clowns Association. We've got many types of clowns. We've got hospital clowns who do brilliant work in hospitals with really sick children.
Ministry clowns,
ministry clowns. Yeah. We've got people who do parties.
Birthday parties, circus clowns, theatre clowns. There are many, many different styles of clowns.
So it's not just that the lazy journalists, the newspapers ring us all the while for that quote around Halloween. They're looking for that quote.
Okay, so I want to call attention just the beginning of this video when he's doing his own little clown thing and they're in a serious interview, because that just brightened my day. I'm gonna be honest with you, but these people are serious about this. They're lazy journalists, they're going in. They're you just want that quote around Halloween about scary clowns. They're not messing around. And so look, if you are passionate about clowning, and you want to brighten people's days and things like that, I could see how a movie like this that demonizes clowns, or last year, 2 years ago when we had the killer clowns. Yeah. You know what I mean? With the machetes and things like that. Yeah. It's not good. It's not good for the payroll,
I just want to, breaking news for these two guys. People's fear of clowns predates the movie It. Even the original movie It, because this is a remake.
So they claim that the term, I don't know, what's the term for the phobia for clowns called again? I forget.
Clownophobia.
Sure. They claim in this clip, you can watch the full clip, I think it's on This Morning. You can watch the full clip, but they claim in this clip that the fear of clowns didn't really have a spike until the book came out in the 80s.
Oh, I guess. I remember a Goosebumps book about clowns. Remember Goosebumps?
Yeah, but that was the 90s, right?
Right, and then I remember Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Still 90s.
Right, but I'm saying
so maybe this is a new thing.
Clowns, I suspect that It probably, the original book, It, the Stephen King book, probably tapped into an already existing fear of clowns.
It's possible.
And that's why it was so popular. That was latent under the surface in the society, but no one was brave enough to talk about it because of big clown lobby. You know, so he basically just tapped into an already existing sort of energy within the society. He didn't invent clownophobia. He just brought
exposed
it to light.
Yeah, and what these guys would call him is a lazy journalist.
Stephen King?
For doing that. Yeah. I mean, that's basically what they're saying here. I feel for them, I think. I don't know why. I think I just have like
maybe
a lot
because they're just wearing the makeup
I know. It's just
on national TV.
Like, I don't know what kind of person or what inspires you to like wake up one morning, you're like, I want to put on giant red shoes, paint my face, and pull flowers out of my shirt. Like, I don't know where that inspiration comes from, but I think it takes a special and frankly amazing person to be like, I'm gonna make people like laugh and do this at kids' parties. Like, I think there's something like weirdly like cool and just like very genuine about that.
Well, clowns take their craft very seriously.
Yeah.
There's clown schools. They, like the, to be like a clown at the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, which doesn't exist anymore, I guess. But you have to go through like a whole academy and like
those balloon animals.
lessons.
Have you seen some of the crazy ones?
Oh yeah. They can do wonders with those balloons. They can do whatever you like.
That is an art form.
Yes, it is just as legitimate as any sort of other art form.
But they brought up a good point here. Like, there's clowns that go to hospitals and try to brighten up kids' days and like things like that. And so I just feel for them that.
Yeah, unclear whether. There's probably some kids whose days are. Some kids whose days are brightened by the clowns. Some kids who are terrified by these guys with like who all of a sudden come in with like a white face and a big red nose, and you're a child and you're like, what's wrong with his nose? And then he's like, oh, boink.
You could say the same about anything. Like, I think that I love these guys just because of like, look at them. How could you not?
Yeah, he's got a giant bow tie.
But you could say the same for anything, right? When you're talking about a scary movie or something like that. There's kids who are like terrified of dogs, and there's dogs that go to hospitals to help sick kids or whatever because they saw what's the movie with the scary dog?
Cujo?
You know what I mean? There's movies where there's like women like serial killers or whatever. It's like, then it's not like you're gonna like be like, well, women are out of work now. Just like get rid of that. Well, you know what I mean? So I get what they're saying. I feel for them.
Have you seen it?
Because it's a very niche thing.
On the topic?
No, because fuck scary movies. I like to sleep at night.
You get nightmares too?
Yeah.
I get nightmares too.
I know. We've actually talked about our nightmares before.
Yeah.
Because they're very real and very serious. And
I wonder what
don't
that
think
says
I
about
could
us.
handle that. Maybe we're just fearful about everything. But not clowns. Clowns don't do it for me.
No?
To be real. No, clowns don't do it for
pro
me.
clown.
I'm pro clown. I'm pro these guys especially.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what you guys think about this. Do you think the It movie will put clowns out of work? Do you think clowns are scary? Let us know. That is our show for today. Thank you so much for watching Think Tank. You can follow me at Hannah Cranston and follow Nando at Nando Vila.
Nando R. Vila.
Oh, Nando R. Vila.
Sorry.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Hello and welcome to Murder with Friends, the show where two friends get together and talk about the darker sides of history. I'm your host, Grace Baldridge, and joining me today is one of my favorite people in the entire world, one of my oldest friends. You came on for one of the first episodes of Murder with Friends, Darren Dean.
Hi.
Darren, welcome to the new and improved Murder with Friends.
I'm glad to be back.
So you did come on the show before, but again, I referenced these episodes before. You guys will never see them unless you want to get members content. Amir and I are gonna start reacting to the early episodes. But you came on before we knew what the show was, and that was your episode stuck out to me because we talked about Andre Chikatilo, who we're gonna be talking about today. But the format of the show was that I did a whole bunch of research, sat you down, and just spat facts at you. And sort of told you that we were gonna have coffee in the afternoon and that you might be on camera. And then it was like, oh, by the way, he ate body parts.
Yeah, so it was a little bit overwhelming, but I think this time I've done a little research of my own, so I'm a little bit more mentally prepared. So I'm ready to go.
I think this time it's gonna work out a lot better.
Yeah.
I think this one is actually gonna make it on a channel.
This is gonna be the one.
So how do you and I, really quickly, how do we know each other?
So Grace and I went to college together during our dark years, as I like to call it. So we went to the same college for 1 year, and then we both transferred out, and we stayed friends. So that's the short version of it. There's a lot more things in there.
People.
Yeah, there's a lot more in there that we don't really want to talk about.
Friends that are sad together stay together.
Exactly.
I think that's what we learned. And what is sort of your interest in true crime or murder or cases, prolific killers?
I guess like my mom and I and my sisters, we all started watching Forensic Files, like the old school, you know, murder documentaries when I was in high school. So I kind of just like grew up kind of being fascinated by it and like watching it at night with my mom and my sisters. And now she's on to Dateline, so now we watch Dateline.
Oh, she's ratcheted up a little bit.
Yeah,
you go from Forensic Files, because that's only 30 minutes, to Dateline.
Exactly.
It's an hour
long, yeah. So yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about Andre Chikatilo, who was a case that a figure you guys have requested, and we are honoring these requests. We're trying to go a little bit more international in 2017, as I've said before. He was a Soviet killer who was around or active between 1978 and 1990. I think it's important to mention, from what I've read on Reddit, that he was a Ukrainian killer that killed people in Russia. So a lot of people say that he was this Russian serial killer. I think the term that's more appropriate is Soviet, but he has confirmed to kill 53 people independently. That's what we can confirm, but he has claimed that he has killed about 56 people. And with that being said, we're going to dive into his story, but let's go to our first clip of who we're going to be talking about today.
Andre Chikatilo. Between December of 1978 and November 1990, Andre Chikatilo's murderous career saw him kill at least 56 people, according to his own confession, making him out as one of the worst serial killers in history based on pure numbers alone. Hints of the monster that Chikatilo would become began to surface when he worked as a teacher, with numerous accusations of sexual assault being made against him by students that eventually led to his firing in 1981. However, his killings had started before that final assault, with the murder of Yelena Zakotnova in 1978 following a failed rape attempt. He seemed to have stabbed his victims in a frenzy before mutilating their body and dumping it. On occasion, tongue tips and some of the organs of his victims appear to have been bitten off, hinting at cannibalistic nature.
So, hope you weren't eating. But with that being said, we're going to dive into his childhood and his upbringing. And I think this is a really interesting part of Chikatilo's story, because the setting with which he was raised, I think, absolutely played a part into his psychosis and how he developed into a killer and just what he was exposed to. He was born October 16th, 1936 in, and I'm going to butcher a lot of names here, so please, Ukrainian and Russian viewers in the comment section, please be nice to me, Yabloknoye, Ukraine. And this was a rural Ukrainian village, and suffering very heavily under some of Stalin's agricultural collectivization policies, and this caused widespread famine, just a lot of poverty that was just throughout the country right now that he was growing up in, and this affected his development as a kid. Can you sort of expand on that?
Yeah, so I was doing a little bit of research on it, and it said that when he was born, he was believed to have suffered from water on the brain, which caused him to have a genital urinary tract issues later in life, including bedwetting, which I'm sure we'll talk about, which kind of caused him to get teased a lot in school. So he had a bedwetting problem up until his late teens. And later in his life, which is kind of an important aspect of his killing, is that he was unable to sustain an erection.
Right, he was impotent, and that is a major point in his life, and it's something that he struggled with throughout his life that definitely comes up, especially in trial, which we will definitely get to. He was raised also without a father. His father was, I mean, he knew who he was, but he was at war a lot. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of what Chikatilo was being raised in, what the climate was in Ukraine during this time, let's go to a clip right now, narrated by my girl Meryl Streep, about, about this time in Ukraine's history. Let's take a look.
In the 1930s, the Soviet government, under Joseph Stalin, turned on its own people, as Stalin mobilized a vast state apparatus to crush those he considered a threat to his power. No fewer than 20 million people lost their lives. How did Soviet communism come to kill so many of its own? While some died in labor camps, and others starved in state-induced famine, more than 1.5 million men and women were executed for crimes against the state. The period has come to be known as the Great Terror.
So that really sets the scene for what will be a dark life that was that existed in a dark time in a country's history, which I think is just the setting here is particularly harsh, perhaps the harshest of any killer that we've covered so far, because you hear about there's trouble at home and things aren't going so well, but maybe he was born into poverty, but this was a deeply ingrained national poverty. He said that he didn't even know the taste of bread until he was 12 years old. I mean, that sort of hunger, that ache. Another thing that I thought was really interesting was that his mom told him that his own brother had been murdered and cannibalized, although this has never been confirmed. And that the brother may not have ever existed, but that his mom told him this to sort of keep him in line. And then again, he was also bedwetting. There's a lot going on within his family structure, and his mom doing what she could to keep her son in check. And then also there's a lot going on in just the culture of Ukraine at the time. It just sets a really sinister scene for what is to come. But that being said, he starts to lead a pretty boring life. Everything is pretty dark and bleak for him, but he just goes on. He's a model student. He's an ardent communist. He also is impotent. And now I think we should sort of talk about that, because while he goes on, he's good in school. He doesn't have a lot of friends. He's kind of nerdy. The major factor that comes into play is his lack of success with women. And I read that he had a number of unsuccessful and humiliating sexual encounters that were at the age of 15 or 17, where he would try and overpower a girl.
Yeah, and I think kind of the first time that he found that he kind of liked that feeling of overpowering a girl was, I think it said he was maybe 17 and she was 11, and it was like one of his sister's friends or something, and he overpowered her. And while she was struggling, he ejaculated. And so, like, although he didn't, have sex or anything, he found that when he was, in this act of
the
basically,
power play.
So being in that place where he was overpowering somebody, he like actually got to feel a release finally.
That's so interesting that early on he would make note that it's the power struggle that really arouses him and excites him. And just that he was so young when he discovered that is really unsettling. And it's also unsettling because he goes on to become a teacher. So he's a telephone engineer for a time, and he moves to Russia, and he lives with his sister, but then he becomes a teacher. That's something that he's interested in doing, speaking with young people, working with young people, and knowing what he had already known about himself and his relationship to those who are younger than him. That's what's so creepy about it. So he lives with his sister. They live together, and then in 1963, pretty shortly after they started living together, she gets sick of him.
Surprise.
I mean, yeah, surprise, surprise. And she sets him up with a local spinster. I don't think that's a very nice word, but everything that I've read has sort of said she was a lonely woman. Some have said that she was divorced. I found two accounts of her name, Faina or Fedosia. So that's another, the public record is a little bit difficult to track down, given that this was, Soviet era Russia. And that is gonna get even more frustrating when we get into the investigation, but just tracking down little details on what was the given name at birth for his wife is frustrating. They have 2 kids, despite his sex problems, and he just continues being a school teacher, but very quickly, around 1971, 1970s, complaints come in from parents and from other teachers. And I don't know if you've heard any of these that you want to share an anecdote about.
Right. I mean, I just read that he basically had to move from school to school to kind of avoid getting in trouble for, having like inappropriate relations with kids.
Or just even sexual harassment. That's what I was reading about. I read that one of his jobs at one of the schools he worked at was for kids that were in boarding school. He had to make sure that they were in their dorms at the correct time. And he would schedule his walk-ins when they would likely be changing. And a lot of this was also young girls. So when we get into the victimology a little bit later, we'll see that he didn't really discriminate across age, although they were young, and he didn't really discriminate across genders either, but his early sexual deviance predominantly did exist with girls. So that's something I think is interesting, worth noting. And something that really sits not well with me, Darren, about this is that he was able to find teaching work despite what you mentioned between 1971.
He was able to switch schools and just kind of keep avoiding
for the better part of a decade.
Yeah, while still continuing to like sexually harass these kids.
Yeah, and he hadn't really ratcheted it up yet. But I think that we see over a decade, because of the lack of oversight and regulation and communication within these school departments, which is, again, remember what time period we're talking about, he was able to get away with so much.
Yeah.
And that people had no idea who they were hiring. And a lot of what this story comes back to for me is sort of the monster next door could be your teacher.
Exactly.
But he does ratchet up over these 10 years. It's not enough to just this sort of this harassment. Someone said that he assaulted them in a swimming pool, which is so terrifying for me because I'm a bad swimmer. He does ratchet it up, and I want to go to a clip right now talking about this first murder and what it would lead to.
First, he acquired a small shack in a rundown neighborhood. In December, he took a 9-year-old girl there. Her name was Yelena Zakatnova. Her friends called her Lena. He'd met her at a bus stop and offered her something Soviet children rarely enjoyed, bubble gum. She agreed to follow him to the house.
He encountered this girl and first discovered with her that violence on the body of a girl was something that would get him excited.
As he began to molest her, he grew increasingly excited and wanted more direct sexual contact with her.
He was unable to perform sexually, so he used a knife instead.
It was the moment when he discovered that murder was his passion. After that, he knew himself in a new way.
So at this point, a killer is born.
Yeah.
He hasn't yet descended to the serial killer madness that we will eventually know as Andrei Chikatilo, but he realizes that this is the ultimate release for him.
Yeah, definitely took a turn here.
The 10 years of sexual assault, harassment, misconduct pales in comparison to what he feels for killing this girl. He goes on to dump her body in the river, dump her bags in the river, and then even though there were multiple witnesses that placed him around the scene at the time that were able to see him and that did report this to authorities, his wife gave him an alibi because, remember, he was married with 2 kids at the time. He was a teacher. He wasn't what we would think of or what anyone would think of as a madman, a killer that's gonna, abduct a 9-year-old girl. How could he abduct a 9-year-old girl?
Yeah.
He's a teacher, and all his misconduct was hidden from the record.
It's very troubling. Not only that nobody kind of like took a step back and was like, okay, look at his history. Is this a possibility? But also that his wife, even though he obviously wasn't there at the time, she was totally okay with lying about it. And I mean, she probably didn't know anything that was going on either, but still.
No one would assume that.
Yeah, exactly. No one would
he wasn't
assume
where he said he was,
was,
so therefore he's a killer.
Exactly.
And then also another man is convicted and killed of this crime, of the 9-year-old girl. And it's only later that he would confess that it was in fact him.
Yeah, and I was reading that their like the way that they would interrogate people was so harsh that they would get a lot of false confessions for things that people didn't even do. So that kind of just is like another just way that he didn't get caught again for like a short period of time.
Yeah, sort of a warped and perverted justice system that is looking for a sort of a clean way of tidying up a case rather than hunting down the truth. And we're going to get into that for sure because, the police attention, even though it was minor and didn't apprehend him, really freaked him out. So he moves to the small town of Rostov, and this is where things really pick up in the Andrei Chikatilo story. This is where he becomes a serial killer. He has access to public transportation. This changes everything. And when we come back, we're going to tell you all about his descent into serial killer infamy. Welcome back to Murder with Friends. Today we're talking about Andrei Chikatilo with my friend Darren Dean. And where we're picking up, Andre Chikatilo has committed his first murder in 1978, but by 1981, he really descends into becoming a serial killer. And like we said in part 1, if you haven't seen that, go ahead and watch that. He will kill upwards of 52, 53 women. He's confessed to 56. So we can't get into every single victim, but I think that we should talk a little bit about the victimology, how he tracked down these victims, and what was the importance of the transportation system and living near trains during this time.
He could pick up basically anybody who was traveling, transients, anybody who was kind of hanging around. I think he would generally pick people who were younger, who kind of seemed like they were alone by themselves. So it was a perfect place for him to pick off people, basically.
Yeah, and another part of his MO was befriending his victims. So that's how he got away with, I think, so much, is because his demeanor and how he carried himself. Again, he was a teacher, and he was an older gentleman, and he had glasses. He seemed very mild-mannered, and so if you were to see him approaching a young runaway, or again, it was really hard to track down where everyone was during this time, you wouldn't really be alarmed. There wasn't anything very sinister about his appearance.
Yeah, and I don't think that the victims were alarmed either. I mean, all of them walked off with him at some point.
Right.
So they felt safe with him.
With the promise of some sort of a treat, or the promise of some sort of a cool gadget that he had access to that wasn't available in Soviet Russia. They were younger. When I say that he didn't discriminate against age, I think that probably below like 25 and down.
Yeah, I think there was only one woman who was older than that, and the rest were pretty much teenagers and young kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And most of them were women, but he did in fact kill young boys as well. And that is very strange to me, because when we talked about his early sexual deviance, it was exclusively towards young girls. So the switch to young boys indicates to me that this was his taste for murder, and he realized that his sexual gratification came more from the act of killing and stabbing to overcompensate for his impotence than the sexual attraction to a specific body type.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the descent. That's when you become a monster in my mind.
Totally.
Because you're attracted to killing, you're not attracted to the victims. It becomes less about the victims. But another part about the train and the transportation element to his story is that he was able to move away from his crime scene without there being, much to do about it. It was very normal for people to take the trains to commute to and from work. It's very normal for him to have train tickets, and for him to, have that as sort of an alibi to show his wife, where he had been, even though she knew. She has sort of alluded that she has known that something was up, but I guess didn't really care. I don't know. How would you not care?
Yeah, I mean, for anybody, I'm sure it would be hard to believe that the person you're married to is a serial killer.
And also, most of Soviet Russia was unaware that there was a serial killer about.
Yeah,
they just knew that kids were disappearing, that transients, that runaways, that people that were, going to school, or that were just figuring their way out, trying to find their way to Moscow or more opportunity, they were just disappearing. And that wasn't very odd, and I guess they didn't know that they should be on the lookout for a serial killer.
Yeah, I think the media at that time didn't want to portray anything that was going bad in Russia.
I think it was less of a want and more of I think it was less of a choice. I think that because it was a state-controlled media at that time, I don't think they were given an option, should we run this story, should we not?
Yeah.
It just wasn't being reported and investigated in the capacity that it should have been. I also think we should touch a little bit on the desecration of the bodies.
Yeah.
Briefly. Stop eating. So a number of times he did eat sex organs, and he would remove body parts like a nose or a tongue. He would slash out their eyes, something that I have learned from Criminal Minds, so probably not the most reputable source, but I know from Elliot Reed, the detective on Criminal Minds, that if you slash out the eyes, that it is an indication that you don't want the victim to look at you anymore, that it is sort of a shame. But also I know from actual research that there is sort of Russian folklore. They believe that the victim's last sight is imprinted on the eyes after death.
Yeah.
So when he's slashing the eyes, perhaps it had less to do with remorse, like Criminal Minds told me, and a little bit more to do with trying to get away with the crime.
Yeah.
Didn't want that imprint on the eyes.
Yeah, and I think he probably didn't want to feel like somebody remembered him killing them either. I think it's also more for him too.
So let's talk a little bit about state-controlled media and what that meant for this case and how it was underreported or how misinformation was allowed to spread. What was the biggest sort of illegitimate story that you heard about that was being spread during the Andre Chikatilo era?
Right. Well, I mean, not only was it just not really being covered at all, but there was a conspiracy among the community that it was werewolves who were killing all these kids, and media wouldn't say yes or no, so they kind of just let it be. They wouldn't say it's a serial killer. They kind of just let people have their own opinions on it.
Well, for 2 years, it took 2 years for Soviet Russian media to report that there was a killer on the loose, and so that there was one independent killer acting alone, and it wasn't just a series of of random disappearances.
Right, yeah.
So that is really bold.
Yeah.
And like you said, people did suspect that it could have been werewolves. And also, you pointed this out, I think, in part one, that the interrogation methods at the time led to a lot of false confessions from people who were not involved at the crimes, that were confessing to crimes they didn't commit, that were then attributed to Andre Chikatilo because they wanted the interrogation to end.
Exactly.
It was really messy, Darren.
It was bad.
And it makes it worse because by 1984, 15 people had died. So he becomes a serial killer in 1981. 3 years, 15 people die. And it's hard not to say that a lot of those deaths could have been avoided had the Soviet media and police work not been more aggressive and transparent.
Yeah, I mean, I think even just running a story saying, there's kids that are being abducted from train stations, I think even that alone probably would have caused people to be more aware of their surroundings and what they're doing. But again, it was just the time.
Yeah, and I think that it's great for us to talk about it. I would encourage you guys to check out this movie called Citizen X. You can find it on YouTube. I don't know if it's legally there on YouTube, but you can find it there on YouTube. Just don't say that I sent you. And they do a really interesting depiction of Andre Chikatilo, who was arrested at a train station acting suspiciously. And let's take a look at that clip.
Please stand, citizen. Chikatilo. May I have your bag? Citizen Chikatilo, you're under arrest.
So yeah, Andre Chikatilo was arrested in a train station for suspicious behavior, and in his bag they did find a knife and rope, but he was only in jail for 3 months, and then when he got out, the killing continued, and we're gonna tell you all about it when we come back. Welcome back to Murder with Friends. Today we're talking about Andre Chikatilo, and in this final part where we are picking up, he has been arrested for suspicious behavior at a train station. They were able to tie him to a theft, so they were able to get him behind bars for 3 months, but Darren, they couldn't tie him to the murder because of a rare blood type. Can you explain a little bit about why they couldn't tie this guy to any of the killings?
Yeah, so at all the killings, obviously there was semen there, and most people, you can get their blood type from any sort of bodily secretion. But with him, he actually had a rare genetic condition in which you can only tell his blood type from an actual blood sample. So you wouldn't be able to match him to it just based on the semen sample.
So what about if he had left a really clear blood sample at one of the crime scenes? You know, maybe if his hand had gotten open, if he had slipped on a knife or something like that. Would that have been enough, or would you need like really a blood sample from the arm, like an IV sort of sample?
So any blood from him, and they would have been able to catch him, but because it was only semen, and the technology back then also wasn't good enough to get. If you were a non-secretor like him, it wasn't good enough to actually get the blood type from the semen. These days, obviously the technology is better, and you can get somebody's blood type even if they are a non-secretor.
So they Russian authorities earnestly thought that they had just gotten the wrong guy, that he was being suspicious.
Yeah, they're like,
that's
there's
not
no
a crime.
way he doesn't match the blood type, so it can't be him.
Despite being found at the train station where it had already been established that the killer was using public transportation for his kills. He's found there soliciting a minor in a very suspicious and odd way with a knife and a rope.
Yeah.
And that's still, that's not
enough,
a crime.
I guess. Not enough.
So he is behind bars for 3 months, and then when he is released, he promptly kills 2 more women. At this point, more than 20 people had been killed. Just people were really, really actively losing their lives, and the Russian authorities were absolutely at a loss, especially when you have this guy that seems like he could be a match, and then because of just sort of, would you say that this was that they were inept in the part of the science, or was it just sort of a consequence of the time that the blood type they weren't able to match it? Like, is it their fault? Is there anyone at fault here, I guess is what I'm asking.
I mean, I'm unsure if they were aware of that rare genetic condition. I mean, only like 15 to 20% of people have that. However, every other piece sort of added up. And sometimes blood evidence or fluid evidence isn't, I mean, obviously in this case, it didn't really help them at all. But I mean, all the other pieces matched up. So yeah, I feel like they're at fault.
So I think it's definitely a little bit of both, because if they should be aware of blood conditions and blood types when clearing a suspect that is otherwise such a perfect fit.
Yeah.
What they do that does help the case is they enlist the help of psychiatrist Alexander Bukhanovsky. And I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name. And he puts together a forensic profile or a forensic psychological profile of what we can expect from the killer. And that really matches Andrei Chikatilo to a T.
Yeah,
describes
about him perfectly.
Right. He talks about he would be antisocial, but he could be married. But if he was married, he wouldn't have a sexual relationship. That he likely was sexually deviant in his early life. All of this just so perfectly lines up. But what's frustrating is that so much of Chikatilo's earlier sexual deviance isn't on record at that point, because the school systems weren't communicating with each other. So that's frustrating. And this really freaks out Chikatilo. He's aware of what the police work is going on around him. At this point, Soviet Russia knows that there is a killer on the loose. And so he's avoiding public transportation. He has a little bit of a dry spell, and he only begins killing again in 1988. And this is sort of his final, for lack of a better word, hurrah at killing. He couldn't contain himself anymore. And during this time, 1988, 19 people die in a year, Darren.
Yeah, 19 in a year.
He's gotten so good at killing at this point.
Yeah, he's really got it down to, I mean, again, for lack of a better term, to a science. I mean, for him, he knows exactly what he wants to do, how to do it, where to leave the body, and he doesn't think he's gonna get caught.
Right, and he doesn't think he's going to get caught. And even though he's no longer using public transportation as much, he's using random victimology that does work in his favor with regards to getting away with these crimes. So he's switched his victimology. Most of the people that died during 1988, during this year, are young boys. And again, that comes back to he's killing for pleasure. Not for, which gives him sexual gratification, but it no longer aligns with his sexual orientation, which is such an interesting thing about who this guy becomes. He begins his life early on as this sexual deviant who was so humiliated by his rejection by women, and so women are the victims that he preys on early on. And then when he becomes a killer and he really embodies this evil, then it's just he wants to kill his easiest targets, and those are young boys that he would, lead off with candy or with toys or whatever sort of treats that he was able to lure them with. And then finally, finally, November 6th, 1990, Andre Chikatilo was spotted acting suspicious because he is covered in blood walking out of the woods. He isn't arrested, though, until November 20th, 1990, because they had to put surveillance on him and make sure he's definitely the guy. He's definitely the guy. And what I thought was sort of interesting about how he was first spotted acting suspicious is they see him walking from the woods, and the investigator or the person that spotted him reported to investigators, I thought it was weird that he was walking from the woods because the only people that go into the woods is to forage mushrooms in that area, and he wasn't dressed to forage mushrooms, and therefore it's weird. And then they got closer and they're like, yeah, no, he's not dressed to forage mushrooms, definitely dressed to kill people though. Like super looks like a murderer. So November 20th, 1990, he's apprehended, which is 9 years after his murder spree had begun.
That's so crazy to me because there were so many signs and just like so many things piling up on him that would lead investigators straight to him, but it took him walking out of the woods covered in blood to kind of seal the deal.
Yeah, he slipped through the cracks and had so many lucky breaks with his blood type. That's so frustrating when you read this story as it unfolds, when you read through the case. I kept thinking when I first learned about him, oh, now they're going to get him, now they're going to get him. And I was so confused when I heard about when his execution was. That's so strange, it's so late. They must have caught him within the first 4 years. No. Just such a mishandling of affairs that went down here. I mean, I think absolutely it does come down to a mishandling across departments.
Definitely.
But he's apprehended, he's put on trial, and his trial becomes really eerie and reminiscent of sort of a circus. A silver lining to this case, at least for the peace and the closure of the victims and families, is that he does open up. I don't know if that would give me closure, and that's something I've talked about a little bit before on this show. I don't know if I'd want to know, but he does talk. And he talks to the guy that did his profile that helped police apprehend him. Alexander Bukanovsky becomes sort of his confidant. And he claims that Andre Chikatilo claims he's killed 56 people, but we can only verify 53. I don't know that it necessarily matters. He's still a monster either way. It's not like the extra 3 gets him a record or something.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me that he basically opened the floodgates when the psychiatrist, was talking to him and just told him everything about every single person that he killed. It's almost as if he was like kind of waiting to tell somebody about his like murderous feats, as if he was proud of it or something.
Yeah, and also what's interesting is that he was a little bit coy with authorities at first, and he did maintain his innocence for a time, but something about Alexander Bukanovsky, who did put this profile together and who understood him so completely even before he met him, and you see this odd relationship develop where Andre does want to talk to Alexander about what he has done, and he reenacts the murders on mannequins, which is very creepy. He takes them to murder sites that they had yet to have discovered. And to me, it's the way that he was able to keep track of all these murder sites is really unsettling because, again, I think we talked about this in part 1. This was a smart guy. This was not a stupid guy. And we talked about Ed Gein on this show before, and that was a dumb killer. He was, maybe an infamous killer, but he was stupid. But Andre Chikatilo, what's so stomach turning about him is that he was really smart and he was able to get away with way more murders than the authorities initially even thought.
Yeah, I think at the time when he was talking to the psychiatrist, the police didn't even know how many there were. I think around that time they thought like 36 or like mid-30s, and then he confessed to even more than that and showed them where the bodies were.
Right.
So I think it even surprised them.
And it would get more and more surprising because his trial is so bizarre and captures the attention of Russia and the world over. So let's go to a clip right now of exactly what we're talking about with this circus of a trial.
On the morning of April 14th, 1992, in the Russian city of Rostov-on-Don, citizens flooded the steps of the House of Justice, anxious for a glimpse of the accused killer, Andre Chikatilo. For months, newspaper headlines had branded him the Red Ripper or the Butcher of Rostov. Chikatilo was dressed in a souvenir Olympic sports shirt provided by the court. His head had been shaved, a standard procedure to guard against lice. As proceedings began, the setting resembled a circus more than a murder trial.
He was in a large iron cage in the courtroom. The cage was to protect him from the rage of the parents of the victims.
He was never able to sit at a table and converse with his lawyer the way a Western defendant would have been.
So yeah, it was a really bizarre scene, and he went on to give about a 2-hour testimony at his trial that was just all over the place, and he blamed a lot of people for who he had become, although he did accept responsibility for what he was accused of. Can you talk a little bit about what he said was to blame for who he was and why he became a murderer?
Yeah, I mean, he blamed Russia, he blamed Stalin, he blamed the government. He said that famine and just how he grew up in such poverty and with no food, he literally blamed the government for his problems.
And I think that's why it captured the nation's attention in such a profound way, was because they knew what the struggle had been under Stalin, and they knew what so many of them had gone through and struggled through. And yet they'd gone through the other side without becoming a serial killer.
Right.
And so to see someone manifest this deep hurt and mistreatment and government just absolutely destroying its own people, waging war almost against its own people, and that he was like, I am the embodiment of that. That evil created me was, I think, really strange for people to look at, because so many other Soviet Russians were saying, okay, but I'm not a serial killer.
Yeah.
And, you know, I see a lot of your logic. I agree with you. It was bad. We hated it. Stalin fucking sucked, man. Yeah. But you don't become a serial killer.
Exactly.
But his excuse, or at least his testimony, did resonate with people. It's really strange to watch. He also whipped his dick out.
Casual, you know.
Just casual. Because on top of saying that I was a creation of, you know, these government practices and malpractices against its own people, also impotence and his rejection by his mother, and then by women as well, all sort of played into his storytelling of who he had become. So there's that, and it was just such a strange and gross trial.
It was strange, and I think he was trying to play up that he was crazy so that he wouldn't get the death penalty. So I think he really wanted to, I mean, not necessarily embellish, but just make things sound.
I think you can use the word embellish. Yeah. I think that he definitely exaggerated a great deal of what he told the Russian people. I think an example of that is what we talked about in part 1, that whether or not he had a brother, and if he did his mom really tell him that his brother was murdered and cannibalized as like a bedtime story?
Yeah.
The only record that we have of that being true is his own testimony.
Right.
So it's makes you wonder, is that just a dramatic embellishment, a lie to gain sympathy from the Russian people so that you would avoid the death penalty?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely was trying anything he could to avoid the death penalty. I mean, when he took down his pants, I mean, who wouldn't think somebody like that is, you know, a little bit challenged, or, you know, has some sort of mental problem.
Right. And then to blame it on the government as well really garners that sympathy too. What I do think is interesting is that I don't really know exactly how Russian prisons were in the 1990s and the early 1990s. I would imagine not great.
Not the best, probably.
It's interesting that he was trying not to get the death penalty, because he was so vilified and hated by the Russian people following, you know, when all these accusations came out and when there was a mountain of evidence against him. I'm surprised that he would have probably been killed even worse behind bars. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
He was, enemy number 1 in Russia when this was all going down. But he does get the death penalty. All of his antics do not work in the courtroom, and he is shot in the back of the head on Valentine's Day in 1994.
So we were alive and well then.
We were 4 years old.
Yeah, it's so crazy to think about.
That's
that
so
this
crazy.
Prolific serial killer was, kind of there during our lifetime. You know, there's not many serial killers that I can think of that were like very prominent in our lifetime. I mean, they don't come along very often.
Yeah, well, thank God for that,
Thank
Darren.
God for that.
So that's the story of Andrei Chikatilo, and he is probably one of the most prolific serial killers that we've covered on this show. What are the themes, when you think about Andrei Chikatilo, how would you sum up how you remember him, how you learned about him, what your research has taught you about him?
I mean, I think a lot about his story has to do with where he was growing up at the time. And I think that had a huge impact on his childhood and how he grew up. And not only that, with the government, with the state-run media, that had a huge impact on him not getting caught. So I think the overarching theme is how the government there really sort of extended the period where he was able to kill.
They certainly were not helpful in a timely resolution to solving this murder cases, multiple cases. I think that for me, what it comes down to is that, you know, we're talking about 53, potentially 56 people who lost their lives at the hands of Andre Chikatilo. And it's frustrating when we talk about cases on this show that I feel like we're not going to be able to tell everyone's story.
Right.
And I really would urge you guys to do your own independent research as well as watch our show.
Yeah.
And what can you guys learn from this? And because we can only scratch the surface. We only have like an hour of your time. And there's so many other stories in here, especially with the state-run media, that I think is so interesting to dive into, and how he was able to abduct these transients at the time, and why were there so many transients at train stations that were moving around? Where were the opportunities in Soviet Russia? There's just so much to dive into. So I really urge you guys to keep the conversation going in the comments section below. And if you want any exclusive content from Murder with Friends, we have a whole bunch of episodes that we actually haven't put out there yet on YouTube. Head over to tytnetwork.com/join. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support, and I'll see you next time on Murder with Friends.
Sugar, spice, everything nice, and a fourth thing, there's a new Powerpuff Girl. Actually, so she's a little bit different. She does contain sugar, spice, and everything nice, but also something else.
Paprika.
Yes, she's so spicy and smoked, but also chemical W, which could contain paprika. Here is a look of her from the new Powerpuff Girls movie.
Sisters, 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 sisters.
Did you miss the reveal of the fourth Powerpuff Girl?
Check this out.
Meet Bliss.
She's so cool. She's bigger because she's older. She's supposed to be like a teenager. And she decidedly looks like a different race than the other girls. Her hair is different. She's just different all around. She shows up after a mystery, spoiler alert, in the movie, which you can watch via the Cartoon Network app, as it was said in the video. She was created years ago by the professor when he was working to defeat this other professor who made the perfect little boy who could fly around and stuff, and he wanted to make a girl that could fly farther and do other stuff. But he mixed in chemical W on accident. I don't know why it's called chemical W, but that's why she looks a little different, I think, and her powers involve telekinesis and shooting out energy blasts. However, she can't control her emotions so well, so she's lived on Bird Poop Island for years. And
just
has recently
because that's
come back.
a thing.
Yes.
Bird Poop Island.
Sure. It's
so
a
quaint.
cartoon.
I heard the weather there's lovely this time of year.
Well, it's mostly crap. And so she's been sitting there and exploding and just messing up the bird poop on Bird Poop Island. And that's her thing. I don't know if she'll be part of the show because it does look like, spoiler alert again, she leaves at the end of the movie.
Well, I hope, it seems like they've made it to where she can come back and forth, you know, like can continue to be a reoccurring character. Because I think it's kind of nice to have an additional character that's a little different from the rest of the girls.
Yeah, I mean, it's like saying like, hey, you know, we know all of you out there who are fans may not necessarily fit into the demo of what Buttercup, Blossom, and the third one,
Bubbles.
And we're recognizing you.
Poor Bubbles.
I forgot her.
And then there's Maud.
So I kind of like that they're doing that. I haven't seen the movie yet personally. I've only seen clips from it. So that's up in the air as far as I'm concerned of whether it's good. What do you think of the new Powerpuff Girl?
I'm a big fan of animation and cartoons regardless. So you know, just getting any type of new
movies or reboots or anything like that is very exciting. And I don't know, I think she looks pretty badass. She has the blue hair, you know, which I think is cool. You know, she's a little bit older, and I hope they don't just like go into the demographic of like, you know, she can't control her temper and she can't, you know, this and that. I hope that they build her up to be like some kind of hero.
Yeah,
for
I saw
it,
that and I thought, why did you make the brown one not able to control her temper? I don't know if I love that.
I've heard some comments about that, but at the same time, you know, maybe they'll make a way to work around that and to make it to her advantage, like make her flaw the actual thing that like saves the day. That's what I kind of like about.
I think they may have been trying to do a framing device of why she's not there, and that's what they came up with. Maybe, you know, Bird Poop Island is where you go if you can't control your feelings, so control your feelings, I guess. Audience, what do you think of the 4th Powerpuff Girl? Please let us know below, and please like and subscribe for more. It has been terrifying people across the country, and by it, I mean It the movie, just to be completely clear, but there was one scene that was so scary, it had to be cut from even that. Bum, bum, bum. This comes from the star, well, a star, Bill Skarsgård, who plays Pennywise.
I mean, the star.
Well, he is it. He is the titular character.
Yeah, actually, the kids were the stars of that movie for sure.
The kids are always the stars of our lives.
They stole the show on that one.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. So speaking in an interview with Variety, Bill Skarsgård talked out about the scene that had to be cut. There's a scene that we shot that was a flashback scene from the 1600s where Pennywise was before Pennywise, and we shot it for additional shooting, and the scene turned out really, really disturbing. And it's me. I'm not the clown. I look more like myself. I'm not gonna spoil what the scene was because we might use it in the sequel, but it's a very disturbing scene. Sort of a backstory for what it or where Pennywise came from. The idea is that it, the entity, was dormant or resting for thousands and thousands of years, and it, the scene, hints on the founding of Derry.
Am I the only one that when reading that,
it's so confusing.
I literally go, oh, they're talking about IT. Oh no, it the movie, it, not
IT.
I know,
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
I was like, oh no, I need to call and get help with my computer. It's crashing. But back to the clown. In my opinion, I actually like backstory scenes and like scenes where they show how like characters before they become what they are. Like those are my favorite types. So I really hope, yeah, I love that. I really hope we get to see that. And we never got to see that in the, you know, in the old mini series with Tim Curry, or I don't even think they go through it in the book. I haven't read the book in such a long time that I could be wrong. But to have like a backstory scene where you get to see Pennywise before
the clown,
it becomes it, and the creature, and I don't know, like I really want to see it, even if they put it on the extra features or.
Well, they might use it for the sequel, he says.
That's fine.
But what it or Pennywise is supposed to be, I looked it up, and he's supposed to be this timeless entity that has always existed and is the enemy of another timeless entity that has always existed in Stephen King's universe, which is the turtle, and the turtle is good, and Pennywise is bad, and it's just like they've always kind of been omnipresent with beyond humanity even, so it's just something that exists there.
What I always thought of for it is fear itself, like it is fear itself, and that's why it feeds off of fear and thrives on fear, and why it hunts mostly children, because you know children are so easy to.
Well, some people actually have theorized that this scene that Bill Skarsgård is describing came from the original script from Cary Fukunaga, set in the early 17th century. This comes from Tumblr, by the way. The scene shows a mother allowing the it monster to devour her daughter in exchange for safety. And according to Digital Spy, this scene also featured a Pennywise unlike the one seen by the kids in the movie, describing it as a incomplete, flesh pale and translucent, like a half-formed imitation of a human. So maybe in that transition between the entity or the idea of fear becoming a physical thing.
And I feel like with it has to take a form that people would
understand,
not even understand, but like derive as trusting, or even though I don't trust clowns.
No one does.
I used to date one. Oh no.
What?
Yeah, I used to date a circus clown.
Why?
It's okay. We're still friends. It's cool.
Okay.
But, I don't. I mean, there's no reason why. I guess
I shouldn't have been so insulting. I'm sorry.
I mean, it was cool. No, but he dumped me for a mime. Any case, now we're getting into my backstory. We can fix this in post, right? So with it, I think it has to take a form that everyone is familiar with, and and I feel like maybe when it discovers that like circus and seeing like Pennywise the dancing clown, like seeing all of everyone. I don't know. I'm just making my own script now, but like seeing all the people being drawn to Pennywise and seeing like the joy and the laughter coming from that. I feel like taking that form in a more trusting thing, to be able to feed off of others would be a good idea.
No, that is a good theory. I know you're like, ooh, about
like,
it, but
words are hard.
Theory. This is we talk about fan theories all the time, and that is one. Audience, where do you think this movie would have been if we included that scene? I kind of like it better without the scene, because the more I know about something, the less scared I am of it.
Oh, that makes sense.
But I mean, I could be scared of fear. Aren't we all? Audience, would it be better with that scene, or is it better without? Please let us know what you think below, and please like and subscribe for more. Verizon is cutting off 8,500 rural customers for reasons that they say include them going over their data use substantially. However, that may not really be the case. So Verizon has disconnected 8,500 customers with 19,000 lines in 13 states, including Alaska, Idaho, Iowa, Indiana, Kentucky, Maine, Michigan, Missouri, Montana, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Utah, and Wisconsin, for reasons that they were saying that these people in these areas under their rural LTE network were roaming so much that it was costing them too much that it would no longer be profitable. This is an actual letter that Verizon sent out to one of the affected customers in Verizon's LTE Rural America program, saying, during a recent review of customer accounts, we discovered you are using a significant amount of data while roaming off the Verizon wireless network. While we appreciate you choosing Verizon, after October 17th, 2017, we will no longer offer service to the numbers listed above, since your primary place of use is outside the Verizon service area. They go on to say that if you don't change your number before this time, you're going to lose your number forever. So sorry, thanks, bye. There is no recourse also to continue using Verizon after this.
You know what's horrible too is that I'm sure in a lot of those places where they're at, they probably don't have service with any carrier. I mean, if it's that rural, I mean, it might be really difficult for them to have any type of service. So the fact that Verizon's just cutting the cord, it's like, man, that really. I have unlimited data, and Lord knows I use a lot. So I'm very grateful that I do not live in any of these areas, because I would be one of the first ones to go. That's for sure.
I'm sorry. That's how it looks like it is, because there are smaller carriers out there that Verizon partners with the roaming that you could possibly use. People who were affected by this did report to Ars Technica that the service is pretty bad. One customer actually says that even though her letter said she was using substantial data, she and her family never used more than 50 gigs of data across 4 lines, despite having a, quote, unlimited data plan. She went on to say, now we are left with very few choices, none of them with good service. I guess small town America means nothing to these people. It's okay though, I live in a small town, I know a lot of people, and I'm telling every one of them to steer clear of Verizon.
Yeah, 50 gigabytes among 4 people.
That's not that much.
That's not a lot at all. And the fact that, so it feels like Verizon's just sending out this letter as an excuse to just kind of, cut the cord, just
so I guess unlimited data isn't really as advertised, at least in these areas. They did claim that people who stay within specific cities wouldn't be affected by this. It seems to be, it's a little spotty. Yeah.
Well, I don't have Verizon, so I'm safe, and I don't live in Maine, so I'm good.
I mean, it just sucks, especially when we're looking at not just wireless carriers, but internet service providers, where you might be very limited as to what companies you can even work with in certain areas. So if they drop you, what can you do? I think we're at this point now where wireless and internet services are more of a necessity than a luxury. You need it very much.
It's part of everyday use, and it's part of most people's jobs and work and everything. So it's like an everyday,
and even just necessities.
Exactly.
So this sucks. I'm sorry. There's no real way for me to fix this or button it up. Otherwise,
we can fix it. Let's go.
Let's go.
Come on,
save
we're
rural
gonna
America
go
from
save
Verizon.
it. I'm gonna put up my own. What's it called? Tower.
For now, I mean, as she said, they have very few options, and there isn't much to do with that. So, audience, what are your thoughts on this data cut from the rural program, and could it happen to us? Please let us know your thoughts on NerdAlertTYT on Twitter and Facebook. For those of you who thought you'd have more time to go to the Upside Down, which is the Stranger Things bar in New York, too bad, it's ending. Netflix has decided to pull the plug on the Upside Down, but they did it in a really cool way, so maybe this is a lesson to all of us on how to let people down.
I mean, if you're gonna get shut down, it might as well be like this. It's pretty cool.
So the bar operates on Logan Square. And in the letter to the people running the bar, Netflix said, look, I don't want you to think I'm a total wasteoid, and I love how much you guys love the show, but unless I'm living in the Upside Down, I don't think we need a deal with you for this pop-up.
Whoa.
Which is a little harsh as well. You're obviously creative types, so I'm sure you can appreciate that it's important to us to have a say in how our fans encounter the worlds we build. We're not gonna go full Dr. Brenner on you, but we ask that you please not extend the pop-up beyond its 6-week run, ending in September, and reach out to us for permission if you plan to do this once again. So it's kind of a cool.
I think that was a cool way of telling them to say, hey, back off. Because there's pop-up bars are becoming so popular now, especially with different like different themes, different movies, different, all type of different genres. And the fact that, if you don't notify, I guess if you do something where you're using a property that's copyrighted or whatnot, the creators can definitely come after you. I mean, that's a big problem.
Because, I mean, Disneyland, Disney parks, they won't allow adults to come in wearing the costumes of the characters because they already have hired adults in those characters, and they don't want someone to misrepresent them or be like, hi, I'm Princess Ariel.
I am Merida.
Do you want some cocaine? It's just, that's not a good representation
that's taking it to a level.
of the Disney brand. It could happen, and that's why it's not allowed. Because of people who never,
Darn Tinkerbell and her cocaine habits, man. But yes, no, the fact that Stranger Things is so popular right now, and also I'm sure they don't want, I'm sure it's very successful to where anything that they do within the bar, Netflix is not getting a percentage of that. They're not getting a cut of that, to where if they extend it longer, towards Halloween and like bank on the fact that the new season's coming out. I mean, it is kind of, it was really cool of Netflix to not be like, hey guys,
stop it now. And
stop it now. And here's also a lawsuit and have a nice day.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a trend now. I mean, there was the Tim Burton bar and restaurant recently.
The Cantina.
Scum and Villainy is still running, and I think it's just not using copyrighted material enough that it's allowed to be there. It's a pretty cool experience, though you won't find, a lot of stalwart Star Wars trademarks in there. Actually, none. There's no trademark material in there. So it's just like a fine line of being a fan and having an homage, yes. And you're also turning a profit, and you're also clearly making that profit off of someone else's IP.
Yeah, and this isn't the Upside Down. I mean, you can't just run and hide.
I thought the letter was cool, but now that I read it, I feel like it reminds me of Steve Buscemi in 30 Rock being like, hello, fellow kids, I'm cool too, and then he's
they like trying to be like the cool uncle, like, I can relate to you guys starting up your bar. Like, yeah, let's go out for a whiskey, but before we do that, let's shut you down.
It is cool to not be sued, though.
Yeah,
so, okay.
I think they did it in a very fun way.
I'll give them that.
And they put enough show references in the letter to where it's pretty funny.
Yeah,
they knew it was gonna get posted. They knew it was gonna
for sure.
It was gonna be
the owners of the Upside Down bar, specifically Jared Saul, the manager, says, if Netflix were okay with us running the Upside Down project through the season 2 premiere in the Halloween weekend, we would most definitely have continued this incredible party a little bit longer. But it looks like there are no hard feelings with this, or maybe some light hard feelings, but it is what it is. Audience, if you want to see the bar, you have through October 1st to do so. Do you think it's fair for them to shut down the bar? And is it fair for other companies to shut down tribute bars as well? Please let us know at NerdAlertTYT on Facebook and Twitter. Apple released Face ID for their new iPhones, and it looks like a very interesting technical premise, but could it lead to some issues with privacy and security? Motherboard from Vice talked to a few different security experts about whether or not we should be worried about this or if we should embrace the technology. Because with new technology comes new questions and some new legal precedents as well. I mean, in the past, we've had some issues with touch unlock even, but with the face, it's even easier. So that does present its own unique problems. There are some things you may be worried about, like, for instance, could Apple create a unique facial recognition database? Could they use that information for someone else? Could the database be stored with a third party, which is not maybe as secure as Apple or as committed?
Will it work on identical twins? Like, I mean, if like you're like keeping information from like your twin brother, and he's like, aha, I have the same face. I'm gonna unlock this right now.
I would say if you were a twin, don't use face unlock.
Yeah, right. Identical.
An identical twin. Yeah. If you're fraternal, it might be fine. The thing is, though, we don't know answers to that question because we don't have it yet. There's also the question if someone can make a 3D printed mask and if it would work. My gut is yes, but until we have the phones, it's hard to know.
Here's a very important question. I mean, I am obviously a pretty badass individual. What if I get into a really bad bar fight? You know, like a typical Tuesday for me, and then like my face is all swollen. I have a bloody nose. I got a black eye. You know, obviously this is going to happen to me because I get into bar fights.
Are you getting
like every other week? You know, like I gotta break the bottle and go after them. Obviously, I'm very good at bar fights. You should see the other person.
Am I if there's?
That's what I'm worried about. Like if I get into a bar fight, will my phone recognize me? Like, oh man, I gotta call someone to pick me up. This is really bad. And then I like try and unlock it. And I'm like, come on, man. Oh, and my face is just too swollen.
The selfie camera utilizes true depth camera system, which is sensors and a dot projector, which should be able to recognize you if you change your hair or if you wear glasses. I don't know what will happen if your face is swollen. There's glass shards embedded in it. We don't know yet. I guess maybe someone will find that out after the phones come out.
My bar fighting days are over. Is what this is all boiling down to.
I think they should be for many reasons.
Oh, what?
They were also asking if there are any obvious privacy arguments for moving to Face ID over Touch ID. Should we give Apple the benefit of the doubt? According to them, the Touch ID had a 1 in 50,000, according to Apple, chance of unlocking with the wrong fingerprint, whereas Face ID has a 1 in 1 million error rate. So it seems like along those parameters, it's less unsecure.
When it scans you, can you do a face like a? I mean, and that way, every time you have to unlock it, you have to do that face, because that would be pretty great.
Sensors might be able to put it together.
But man, I'm just trying to find loopholes. I'm just gonna get it.
Mess this up,
I'm just gonna get it to see if I can like break the system.
I mean, that's what QA is for.
Yeah. So we gotta go get in a bar fight when this comes out. See if it works. Okay.
So from a legal standpoint, it looks like Face ID is similar to Touch ID. There doesn't seem to be a strong difference. However, there's a big question of whether law enforcement can force you to open your iPhone with your face.
See, that's where the face would come in handy, because I'll be like, oh, it's not working, it's not working. And then like they look away and I'm like, aha, I got it.
Well,
is that not
I mean,
how it
it looks like courts disagree on what exactly from what self-incrimination means. So they've ruled that they can't compel you to give up your passwords, but giving up a fingerprint like Touch ID is not a form of testimony. Therefore, it's not subject to Fifth Amendment protections. The same could be argued by your face. As I said recently, from a legal standpoint, the analyses show that face and touch sensor are kind of the same in terms. This is all very murky, is what I walked away with from this. Law enforcement does need a warrant on probable cause to get you to open your phone. However, you could worry about what if they just hold your phone in front of your face. That's a little bit worrisome.
And I'm passed out from a bar fight and they just...
Or you're just sitting in the chair and they go, look over here, look over here.
Like, no.
No, Fifth Amendment.
I'm not ready for my close-up. No.
The government can compel you to produce passwords and signatures or even blood, but not engage in a testimonial act, which may incriminate you. Under a traditional analysis, you could be required to open your phone with your face because it is not a testimonial act. I think there will need to be many different trial and error cases, unfortunately, to figure out where we are with this.
There's a lot of gray area in that one.
It really is. In 2014, a Virginia judge ruled that police can force people to unlock their devices with their fingerprints. 2 years later, a judge in a district court in California issued a warrant to allow cops to use a person's fingerprint to open an iPhone. Earlier this year, a federal judge in Illinois denied a warrant demanding that everyone in a Lancaster, California building attempt to unlock an encrypted phone with their fingerprint.
Wow.
I mean, there isn't really a lot of designated answers to this. It's still super murky, and it's probably going to get murkier with the ease of holding a phone in front of someone's face. Maybe if you shut your eyes, maybe if you squint, like Bonnie said, put your hair in front.
Yeah. What if you're like lying in bed and it's really dark and you want to like look at something on your phone and you're trying to unlock it and there's no light and you're like, oh, this is horrible.
Well, you could also enable password.
Shh. I'm too lazy for that. I'm like, unlock.
In iOS 11, you could push the power button 5 times rapidly, and that would disable Touch ID and Face ID. So you could do that if you're in a weird situation where that would be necessary. I feel like I think this might be a thing with couples outside the legal standpoint, or like if one of them's sleeping, they could be like this and then read their text.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Discover some.
Whoa. Oh man.
So yeah,
I was just thinking bar fights. I didn't even think about that.
You were thinking about punching, not discovering someone's secrets, which is what I want to do.
Status. Oh dear. Okay. Not giving you my phone.
No, don't. I wouldn't. As your friend, I wouldn't.
Okay.
Audience, do you think that the Face ID recognition system will be harmful or helpful in the future? Please let us know at NerdAlertTYT on Facebook and on Twitter. Researchers think they've discovered the answer to the troll problem. How do you stop trolls? It looks like it kind of works when you ban them, surprisingly. So this was regarding Reddit. So a couple years ago, Reddit famously shut down subreddits. In particular, the study looks at 2, one called Fat People Hate, one called Coontown. One is obviously racist, and one is also a very hate-filled and judgmental site. Both of these subreddits seem to be very, very toxic environments with no other purpose except for being horrible in general, and they were both shut down. So certain researchers conducted in the Georgia Institute of Technology, Emory University, and the University of Michigan decided to examine this, taking data from 100 million Reddit posts that were created before and after the subreddits were dissolved. So in the journal they conclude that the 2015 ban did work. So what they did, it was follow what these users did after the subreddits were banned compared to what they had done before. So they extracted words from the banned subreddits to create a data set that included hate speech and community-specific lingo, racist argumentation, slurs, words that contributed to shaming, words that were connected to the practice of posting hateful comments. And according to the researchers, the data showed that following the ban, many more accounts discontinued their use of the site than expected. So,
well, because most trolls, all they're wanting is attention. So if they're just posting and they just want that, they want to stir the pot, they want that attention, even if it's negative attention. They're like just craving that, to where if they get banned or if people just stop responding altogether, like there's nothing for them to do. They're just like, well, and they gotta go do something, like they gotta go garden or something.
I mean, it's possible you have other interests besides being a hateful, horrible person.
Yeah, gardening.
Because that's not, I don't think that's an effective use of time, but I'm not everyone. According to the researchers, 33% of the users of Fat People Hate and 41% of the users from Coontown became inactive or deleted their accounts. Users who stayed decreased what the study authors defined as hate speech on other subreddits by at least 80%. And when they migrated onto other subreddits, those communities didn't see a significant increase in hate speech. However, according to the researchers, instead of spreading the hatred and infection and toxicity of hate speech to the rest of Reddit, they found other subreddits that are already high in hate speech, including the Donald, Black Crime Matters, and weirdly, a number of seemingly harmless TV groups like Mr. Robot, Homeland, and Fargo TV saw an influx of users from those hate groups, although not an influence of hate speech. So I guess they did have other interests that didn't involve being terrible.
It's like, oh, I can't write on here. I'm gonna go watch Mr. Robot and then be angry about that.
Show,
it is a good show.
Okay.
But no, one of my biggest things I'd always tell people is don't feed the trolls. Like, don't feed the trolls. Just block them. Don't even respond. Just ignore them. Don't read the comments. I mean, they're gonna keep spewing it, and just it's pointless.
It did seem to kind of work. However, it's just, you have to remember Reddit is one site, right? So after this, they did find that some users took to other social media sites like Vote, Snapzoo, and Impeopled, which are not sites that I'm familiar with
I have
personally.
never heard of any of those.
No.
Oh my.
But they did discover that 1,536 of the Fat People Hate users had the exact usernames on vote.co, and it once again engaged in their hate speech of both similar subreddits.
But if some, I mean, you know, you can always argue like the freedom of speech argument, but in all honesty, like if some of these sites, if it goes against their terms of use and their mission statement, I mean, they're more than capable of just, you know, of banning you. I feel like sites like Twitter and other things like that should kind of take a hint on that.
I think, especially with Reddit, they definitely have the control of being able to define what their site is about.
Sure.
Right, so even though you could say free speech is not a term that applies to private companies. It applies to the government that would protect you from being persecuted.
And there's also nothing, if you can't write on their sites, fine, go and start your own site if that's
what
the thing.
They
like,
did.
That's what they did. Oh.
Well, they went to other sites that still allowed it.
Right.
But I think Reddit is, Reddit is a major website. These other ones are smaller. So I think
I've never heard of any of these.
If you really wanted to engage in hate speech constantly, you would find a way. But it did look like that a lot of people didn't rate it as one of their most chief interests, so they stopped doing it, or at least found another way to vent whatever issues they have.
Can't we all just get along, like hold hands, sing kumbaya?
I think that's the main answer, which is, do you need to do this at all? Is it necessary? What underlying problems do you have that you feel you need to do this? But of course, that's not going to be a blanket solution to whatever issues are at hand. So it kind of worked, but it kind of didn't. Audience, what do you think the solution is to stopping trolls? And I don't mean, cute trolling. I mean very toxic, hateful trolling. Please let me know on NerdAlertTYT on Twitter and on Facebook. Researchers have found that there are 4 essential types of Facebook users. So the question is, which one are you? So this research was recently published by people from Brigham Young University, and nope, these are all Brigham Young University. So you can read the abstract yourself online. But basically what it boils down to is that this research believes there are 4 types of people who use the massively popular social networking site Facebook. And those types are the selfie, the town crier, the window shopper, and the relationship builder. And somehow the 2 billion people who use Facebook all fit into one of these 4 categories according to the research. So let's break down what these are exactly, and maybe you could figure out which one you are.
I think I know which one. I think I'm a little bit of a mix between 2, but explain them first, and then I'll explain why.
So the first one is called Gryffindor. No, the first
I'm a Hufflepuff. I know this one. This one's easy. Hufflepuff.
The selfie is more about self-promotion. So the people who are in this group are taking photographs of themselves, broadcasting incessantly, using this for promotion, there's no ceiling on how many likes, comments, or attention attention that these people are seeking. I know I'm phrasing it in a really negative way, but it isn't necessarily. I would say most celebrity pages are in this group. There's the relationship builders. They use Facebook kind of like how you would interact with someone socially in real life. So you would post things, respond to others, engage in debates, conversations, build connections online, build with people you already know, keeping in touch with old friends, making new friends, extension. It's an extension of their real life, essentially. So I would say that's probably most people, but I don't know that at all. Town criers are the opposite of that. So they kind of view themselves as the people who needed to alert other people about news or things that are happening in real life and virtual life. So instead of focusing on themselves in a personal way, they see themselves as needing to share articles, comments on current events, and announce major events to the world as soon as they possibly can. All of LA turns into this when there's an earthquake, just so you know. And lastly, there are window shoppers, which are kind of not like the other three at all. They're more observers. So it's a more passive experience where you're just looking at posts, reading them, kind of taking different things away from what people are saying or posting themselves, observing behaviors. So you're kind of there, but you're not interacting. Like you're a lurker, basically. That's a nicer way.
Well, that's a creepy way of putting it.
I lurk on Reddit. I never post on Reddit, but I read a lot of stuff and I absorb a lot of information. So there you go.
Well, there you go. You're a lurker.
On Reddit.
On Reddit.
On Facebook, I think I'm more of a relationship builder, but I would like to be more of a selfie person because you gotta promote yourself, and I don't like doing it, but it's necessary.
That's what I feel. I feel like I'm a mix between selfie and relationship builder because being in this industry, you have to be a selfie Facebook user because, I mean, not meaning like taking selfies all the time, which I do, but I meant like, you know, like you have to constantly be promoting yourself, and it is exhausting. It's you know, I use Facebook for a lot of different work purposes, but the relationship builder is ultimately why I keep Facebook because, you know, I keep in touch with my family and my friends. My grandmother would kill me if I got rid of my Facebook.
How else would you know when anyone's birthday is?
Oh, that too. That's so helpful. I'm so bad with dates. I'm like, oh, is it your birthday? It's like, Bonnie, my birthday's not until January. I'm like, I'm so close.
I still wish you well.
Yeah, and I wish you well.
Day and all days.
I wish you well when your birthday comes around in 7 months.
But I think these are all broad and vague enough that maybe you could actually cram 2 billion people into these 4 different groups.
I mean, you can put everyone into 4 Hogwarts houses, so why not?
I feel like I'm a blend of 2 houses, though.
See, but you can be a blend in here too. Like you can be multi.
I did take a quiz that was just like, which 2 houses are you, and which is your dominant? And it was just like, I like this quiz. It's more nuanced, as we all are.
Kind of brings it all together.
Well, yeah. It's not really a personality divider itself. It's more like, how do you handle Facebook? So audience, how do you handle Facebook? Which of the 4 groups in this research do you think you are? Please let us know on Nerd Alert TYT on Facebook and Twitter. Americans are swearing more than ever. Why is that? Are we coarser? Are we worse? No. So I'm sure that was bleeped out, and I'm just gonna say, yeah, it's gonna probably be bleeped out, but you'll still know exactly what I was saying due to context.
Damn it! I'm so glad I'm used in this one.
I don't think damn it is a swear word.
Is it? Oh, well, hold on. I'll think of more.
Okay,
Don't worry.
Okay. A new study by San Diego University psychologist Jean M. Twenge suggests that the increased swearing in modern years, or more recent years, is not due to a decline in morals and values, but rather a growth of individualism, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So her team searched the Google database to see how the use of Carlin's, you may remember the famous 7 words you're not allowed to say on television from George Carlin. So they followed those 7 words in particular to see how they changed from 1950 to 2008 for this particular study. So what they found was a large trend more towards self-expression and individualism, which I don't think is a bad thing.
I will say everyone should read this article just for the description of the curse words in itself. Instead of listing the words, they describe the words, which is funny to me. I think it's funny.
I'm not really offended by any of these words because I don't think they're meant to harm anyone in particular. I mean, what do we have? Mother sucker, shit, crap. Nope, not crap. They're not even listed in this article, so it's up to you to go get it to yourself.
I hope that was all like beep, 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 like Morse code. It's like beep, 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 beep. You just like said save our ship or something.
Yeah, sure. I think it's fun. That's fun too. So what they were looking at in this particular part was American books since 1950. So seeing the word mother in the 1950s was not very
scandalous,
common, but it appears 678 times more often now. There are 65 possibly less offensive replacements for and it has around it appears 168 times more often than it did in the 1950s. Shit, which I don't know if it's available through context what I've just said, but turd, poop, you know, it emerged 69 times as often, and no, that is not a joke.
I mean, now we have a whole movie about a poop emoji, so I mean,
but that movie sucks and shouldn't exist.
I know, I'm aware. I didn't even watch it.
But this is not, you know, we're not all terrible. When back in my day, we were better people. No, it's not like that necessarily.
My inner sailor comes out every now and then, you know? Like,
well, maybe it is, because I don't find these things very profane, personally. Yeah. I mean, if these words are used more and more, we're going to be more used to them, and we're not going to care as much. And that's, maybe we'll come up with new swear words, and there will be a new set that we can't say on television.
Frickin' frack!
Oh, no, that's only in BSG.
Oh, that's right. That was the name of my computer. Because anytime my computer would crash, I'd be like, frickin' frack.
Perfect.
And so that was the name of my laptop.
So you could talk
to
it more.
Yeah.
But people are doing things that are more self-expressive. One is giving their children unique names instead of, you know, John or Jane.
Oh, I thought they were calling their kids like shit and
No. I'm talking about self-expression. So it is kind of a break from, it's different. It's a decline in social taboo, and it's more about expressing yourself as opposed to falling more into conventional standards. So
I kind of want to name my kid that now.
Maybe you should think about that first. It's just more individualistic language in general, and the culture has shifted more towards freedom, self-expression. I think that's good, because what's the point of obeying rules and social constructs that don't exist anymore even? I don't get it. I do get a lot of comments though from older people who don't appreciate the way I talk, and that's just your opinion, man. I disagree.
Beep, 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 beep.
Audience, are you offended by any of George Carlin's 7 words you can't say? Please let us know why at NerdAlertTYT on Facebook and on Twitter.
Bye.
And swear words. Google has taken a stab at stopping clinical depression, and some people say this is a great thing, but some therapists are saying it's awful. So recently, within the past few weeks actually, Google announced that it teamed up with a mental health advocacy group to address the epidemic of depression. And people who type the words clinical depression into Google search on their mobile devices are now presented automatically with a link to a screening questionnaire to assess whether or not they are depressed. And this is just one company's steps. Not Google. Apple has recently said that they want to hire someone with psychology and counseling backgrounds to help train Siri into helping other people who may have issues that they have not addressed yet. And normally these types of behaviors are lauded, because I like the idea that mental health is becoming destigmatized and that we are addressing it more and we're taking it seriously. Because in the past, people would be like, get over it, just do this, just do that, which is not really a great way to handle anxiety or depression or any other mental health disorders. So this is a couple companies' attempts at this. However, some psychologists think these actually do harm. Simon Gilbody of University of York says, Google's initiative has been reported positively and uncritically despite bypassing the usual checks and balances that exist for good reason. It is unlikely that their initiative will improve population health and may in fact do harm, because they've also said that the questionnaire could lead to some false positives.
Well, that's what I'm afraid of. So there's like two sides of this. One side is, you get a whole bunch of people on there taking this, quiz or seeing if they're depressed, and it could, because they're not getting like that personal interaction with someone who actually is a professional and who knows what they're doing and who's able to assess them with just, you could lie to a computer, not lie, but you know what I mean? Like you can put things in the computer, like you don't understand yourself when you're, I don't know. It's hard to put into words.
Self-reporting
All I'm saying is a lot of mental problems could be self-diagnosed incorrectly, where like someone with schizophrenia could go on there and be like, oh, I have clinical depression, or I'm fine, and then if they had gone to a therapist, the therapist might have been able to uncover some of their personal problems.
I think sometimes, in many areas, we're kind of bad as humans at understanding ourselves and realizing problems and realizing positive things as well. So that is a major factor with it. There's also another issue, and that is with privacy. John Grohol, psychologist and administrator for PsychCentral.com, says Google is a technology and marketing company that collects people's data. It's not really clear about how they would use this information. I wouldn't want sensitive information like mental health to be in the hands of a marketing company.
That is a very good point.
That is a good point. Outside of the obvious from these psychologists.
And also the last thing I want is to be laying on a couch and going like, Siri, this and that. And then all of a sudden it's like, it seems like you have issues. Like, tell me about your father. Like, that's the last thing I want. It's like for Siri to tell me that I have problems, being diagnosing me and asking me. I'm like, this is really creepy. A whole part of going to therapy and talking to therapists is to get that personal connection with someone to where you feel like you get that level of trust and this and that. And I don't know, maybe some people would prefer to talk to a computer, but I don't know.
Well, I think it's okay as a first step, which is, maybe I should speak to someone else.
Maybe I should get a second opinion besides artificial intelligence.
Talk to a doctor about this instead of this thing that doesn't really know what I'm going through, and maybe I don't even know what I'm going through. But I think it's okay on that level. However, the other point we have about Google being a marketing company and collecting data is something that I would also be a little more wary about personally.
This is how we get Skynet, people. This is how we get Skynet.
Well, you may not necessarily have the data linked to your answers, and then they use anonymized data for sure. But they may also use this to help your user experience, i.e. serve you ads, which I might not really care for in general, but maybe that's a whole different ballgame than what we're talking about here. So I would say this is okay for a first step, but you should probably seek beyond Siri and seek beyond Google search if you want to improve your mental health. Audience, have you taken the test and what did it find? Do you agree? Please let us know at NerdAlertTYT on Twitter and Facebook.
So late last week, you might have seen the hashtag #StopBetsy on Twitter. Now this came after Betsy DeVos, who is our Department Secretary of Education, made an announcement that they were going to be rolling back some Obama-era guidance on Title IX and how to deal with sexual assault and sexual harassment on campuses. Now, a lot of her comments came in response to a letter that the Obama administration released to schools. It's called Dear Colleague. It was basically a long letter. I implore you to read it. That sort of outlined how schools should approach sexual assault, what sexual assault looks like, how teachers should be trained, how students should be trained, what sort of the process of involving the police and the courts and all of that looks like. So read that. But Betsy DeVos had some comments on it. And she said that she was concerned that the current policy denies due process to individuals accused. So she got a lot of backlash for this because obviously those that are accused in sexual assault and sexual harassment cases are oftentimes rapists or sexual abusers and things like that. And she said that they're already in the process of rolling back the Obama-era Title IX guidance. Now, you might recognize the name Title IX when it comes to like sports or something like that, right? Because Title IX basically says that you can't discriminate between genders when it comes to funding in schools, and so that it talks about sports and other education programs and things like that. But it also applies here to sexual assault and sexual abuse, because not giving those who are victims of sexual abuse the proper sort of going through the motions and hearing them out and understanding what they've gone through is oftentimes discriminating for genders, right? Because women are oftentimes, or more often than not, the victims of sexual abuse. It's actually 1 in 5 women on a college campus is going to be the victim of sexual abuse, which is
a staggering
terrifying.
number.
Yeah, and oftentimes sexual abuse is like widely underreported, so that number is probably even higher.
Yeah.
But I want to mention out before we go into the rest of the story that men are also the victims of sexual abuse, and it's about 6%. Okay, so 6% of men are victims on college campuses as well. Now, Title IX, as I mentioned, is that federal law that prohibits discrimination based on sex, and so it includes this protection for sexual harassment, like I said. Now, in 2011, the Obama administration outlined the guidelines for schools on how to handle sexual assault allegations in the memo that's referred to as a Dear Colleague letter, okay? Now, the letter reminded schools of their legal obligation to address sexual violence amid concerns that schools were not taking the issue seriously enough and called on schools to step up investigations of reports. It also provided guidelines for investigations and hearings. And I think one of the most notable aspects of this Dear Colleague letter that I think Betsy DeVos is probably alluding to in her rollback is this part of going through on evidence, right? And so instead of needing 75% evidence, in most of these cases, it's about 50%, right? A 50% chance, because in cases of sexual abuse and sexual assault, there's often not a lot of evidence, because if you shower after or something like that, you're going to be missing some of the evidence. Or if you wait a few days because you're, concerned about retaliation, traumatized, whatever it may be, you won't have all of that evidence. But because the numbers are so staggering, and only about 2 to 10% of rape allegations are false, they say that you should sort of take those numbers into account in your proceedings. What do you think about this move from Betsy DeVos?
Well, like you mentioned, the numbers on of college campus sexual assault are just like absolutely staggering. It's like, I mean, I'm not a parent, but I can just imagine like looking at these numbers and like sending your daughter off to college, and you're like, this is a 20% or at least, or maybe more chance of my little girl being, like sexually abused. Like that's like a crazy thing to think about, that we're, sending young girls to be, educated like at our most hallowed institutions in the country, and they were basically sending them to this like sexual assault meat grinder. It's absolutely crazy. It's very clear that it's a very serious problem that requires some sort of action. And it's just like the conservative hypocrisy on this, where all of a sudden they care about due process, which they never do in any, like whether it's in cases of terrorism or drug offenses, anything. They do not care about due process ever. But in this particular narrow case, they all of a sudden become like civil liberties heroes. So it's very clear that the Trump administration, shocking, and Betsy DeVos in particular, like are not acting in good faith. Like, right, they don't really care about the problem. They're just sticking up for part of their base, right? This sort of like men's rights group activists and things like that. That being said, like it is very clear that it is such a almost like a wicked problem, right? I mean, because there's a reason why college campuses or colleges don't quote unquote take this issue seriously enough is because, like, imagine you're the first college that starts like seriously dealing with sexual assault. All of a sudden, like, your numbers look like, if you start investigating and you start to see all these cases of sexual assault, and all of a sudden, like, your college might get a reputation as being like the sexual assault college. Right. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's like a perverse incentive for them not to investigate, so that so it doesn't seem like it's actually going on.
Right. And that was the incentive then, but then after this Dear Colleague letter, basically the Obama administration said, we're not going to give you money, we're not going to do these things if you do not follow these guidelines. So then there was an incentive that almost
It's almost
the
like we need to see like instances of like reported sexual assault like uptick in a certain college campus as a good thing, if that makes sense.
Because more people are reporting and feel comfortable
exactly.
reporting.
That means that they're doing something right in terms of dealing with the problem. The other problem is that schools aren't, they're not criminal investigation centers or whatever. Like they're not law enforcement. They don't have those tools necessarily. Like so they probably may need some sort of funding program or something to develop the institutional ability to deal with something like this, because they clearly don't have it at this point. They're just not built for that, right? So it is a really thorny issue. Rolling back this is like obviously like the exact opposite thing of what they should be doing. They should be doing more to deal with the problem. They should be like looking into further government programs, new processes. I mean, it's a very, very difficult situation that requires a lot more to be done. I don't necessarily have the answers. I'm not a criminologist or an expert in how to investigate this, but like doing less and reverting back to the status quo is obviously like an unacceptable position. I mean, these numbers are just like too staggering.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, and I think that maybe is the answer, right? Is keeping the Dear Colleague guidelines, but adding on to it, right? Like I think adding on aspects of education, right?
Yeah.
Where both genders are educated in what sexual assault and sexual abuse looks like, what to do if this happens to you, like maintaining evidence and things like that, and how to sort of deal with that. But also, like, we need to change the culture around masculinity and power dynamics, where this isn't sort of like, oh, he got drunk and whatever sort of thing, and we need to change that.
And I think that's a good point, because like everything that I've ever learned about sort of criminal justice would tell me that, harsher punitive measures around a certain crime don't necessarily reduce the instances of that crime. Like there is something to be said about like just like overall justice and just a crime deserves some sort of punishment just as a fundamental sort of theoretical case.
Yeah, and a little bit of emotion too.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we're actually trying to sort of reduce the problem, whether it's drugs, whether it's murder, we have the most punitive criminal justice system in the world, probably. Yet we don't have fewer murders. We don't have fewer instances of sexual violence. We don't have all these things. They don't necessarily have an effect on the actual crime. The only way we can have an effect to reduce crime is to programs of rehabilitation to reduce recidivism rates and general, like you said, changing the culture, changing the education, empowering women, empowering men. Really educating men. The perpetrators of this. Obviously there's a million sort of degrees, and like there's like the full on just kind of like sinister behind the dumpster kind of rapists. But
there's like date rape.
There's probably some that maybe don't quite realize what they're doing. If that makes sense. Like there's it runs the gamut, right? So we could probably eliminate a huge chunk by educating men. Right, teaching them like these certain things are not okay. Like it's just not okay. Which maybe sometimes now they do think it's okay.
Right, and you know what I mean. Like I think understanding what's not okay, right, and understanding what is defined as that is helpful. But also like saying like, oh, if somebody's under the influence. They cannot give consent. Even if you're both under the influence, they cannot give consent. And I know that seems really frustrating to people, because they're like, wait, we were both drunk. But at the same time, like there is a power dynamic that's intrinsic, unfortunately, in heterosexual rape. And so those things need to be taken into account.
Yeah.
And so we do need to sort of be educated on that. And I think if men and women alike are educated on that, then maybe we'd like reduce some of this, and of course changing the culture of masculinity
obviously,
and how people exert their masculinity or their power, whatever it may be, and feel like I get drunk and I eat a lot of nachos. Like I'm not trying to pin anybody down. Except for guacamole, but I think that's part of the how I was brought up and things like that, and some people don't have that benefit, and so they may act out when under the influence,
I don't
or
know,
with
like,
a partner or
when
something
you-
like that, where they feel they have more freedom.
When you got to college, had you been around alcohol before in your life?
I had been around alcohol, and I was very educated. Like my mom has told me since like I think I was like 9 years old, like watch your drink, like whatever. But I will tell you, as conscientious as I am about those sorts of things, and careful as I am, and not getting like blackout and things like this, like I was roofied in college, and and I'm extremely.
I was roofied once too.
Really?
Yeah.
So like. Both of us extremely cautious, like educated around these things, and you can still
obviously
be in that situation.
There's obviously like the roofie cases, but there's plenty of cases where it's just like, you know, we got too drunk. I just remember when I got to college, you know, I was raised by European parents, like a very different culture around alcohol than I realized coming from, you know, sort of quote unquote like regular American upbringings. When I got to college at Boston College when I was 18, I remember being shocked at like all these people who had like never touched a drop of alcohol before in their lives, and you know, got to college and all of a sudden it was like they went